Overlord First Half Chapter 71, The Capital City of the Kingdom Part 11. Climb was holding a black lump. It was wriggling in his hands and was extremely soft, so it was flattening in his hands due to its weight. Climb hit that strange ball full of liquid and splattered it on his armor. The ball spread out with a splash, and made a black mark on Climb's wide armor. What Climb held was a ball with black dyes. This explained this scene. However, that was not the end. He did not simply destroy that ball. The black dye on his armor moved, and spread out across the armor's surface. After a few seconds, there was not a place left unstained, and the sparkling white turned into a deep black. The ball Climb destroyed was an item known as a magic dye. High-level ones could give resistances to acid, heat and cold, but the one that Climb used simply changed color. The reason he was using this was of course, because Climb's pure white armor was too eye-catching. However, changing color like this had the merit of not being associated with Climb since his normal image was strong. Climb. Confirming that he had finished changing color, Locuse had believed that he had finished preparations and came over. She began to give the final briefing. This job this time was to attack the 4 brothels, save the people inside, and retrieve any secret documents. They would prioritize the removal of the staff, and if they were customers, they would knock them unconscious. The reason why they were saving the guests was as they could be used as weapons for Marquis Raven. The attack on the 4 brothels was split into 4. 2 would be handled by Blue Rose. 1 would be handled by another adventurer party. Climb would observe the last brothel. After that, a party that finished their attack would attack the last brothel with Climb. The secrecy of this job was extremely high, and the noble faction could not know of this. Thus, they would prevent it from escalating into a large commotion. They would also prevent information from being leaked. Climb listened to Locuse's explanation and nodded. Understood. Then, take care. Oh, is the conversation over? Gagrin-sama. Just a bit away from them were the members of Blue Rose, Evil Eye, Dia, and Tina. Gagrin separated from them and came over. Her outfit was different from when they were in the inn, and she were covered in first-class magic items. Her blackish red full-plate mail's chest piece had spikes and a rune that looked like an eye. This was the famous armor, Gaze Pain. Her gauntlet was changed slightly, and a pair of entwined snakes was engraved in. Those who touched the gauntlets would be healed, and it was known as the Gauntlets of Caducus. The large war pick that one could only use with both hands was Feliron, Farron. The large crimson cape that a member of nobility would wear was the Crimson Guardian. Hidden under her armor was the Vest of Resistance, the Amulet of Dragontooth, the Belt of Greater Power, the Wing Boots, and the Circlet of Twister. Her rings also had large amounts of power imbued in it. This was the full loadout of one of the members of the kingdom's strongest A+ adventurer party, the strongest warrior, Gagrin. What are you here for? Locuse spoke back in cold words, and her body was also covered in items no inferior to Gagrin's. First was the magic sword whose name knowed no bounds, the demon sword Carinarum. It was a bastard sword, and since it was in its sheath he could not see its blade, which was said to look like a pitch-black night sky. However, he could tell that the grip alone was of amazing make. Especially the giant black sapphire embedded in its hilt, and shines as if it were a magical fire. Her full-plate armor had a shine that could only be explained by it being a mix of platinum and gold, and multiple unicorns were engraved on it. Since it could only be worn by women and could not be dirtied, it was known as the Virgin Snow. Opposing such a shiny armor, the cloak on her back was a mouse-colored cotton cloth. This was the Cloak of Rat Speed, that could grant higher movement speed, sensitivity and evasion, that one could not tell based on its appearance. It was not only that. She had magic items that rivaled Gagrin's. Even one would cause one's eyes to pop from the price. Having this many was precisely because they were A+ adventurers. Oi oi, leader is strict. She is thinking about teaching Climb about fighting. What? Ha. Well, it's fine, that's to that girl. This is quite a rushed job. We don't have enough time to relax, you know? End this quickly. Yes. But, Locuse. Can we use that? That is, Carinarum? It's fine though. Really? Well, don't push yourself. If it gets bad, tell us anytime. Eh? I don't really get it, but fine. Locuse returned to the other members of Blue Rose and Gagrin watched her go. Gagrin then took out from her breast pocket. She then thrust it out to Climb. Bring this along. Gagrin passed him handbells. 3 of them. In appearance, they were very similar, but the design on them was different. Climb had heard of what they were and when to use them. "This is. I don't think you'll use it, but this is just in case." But the reason why Climb was hesitating was as it was not an item that an attacker like him would use. Gagrin then laughed away Climb's worries. "Ha! We will leave this to Tia and Tina. There is no chance for any detection items to be used. So, it is better for you to use this." Gagrin lowered her voice. "However, because of that, don't try to use it. Properly evaluate the situation and do it." Climb was about to ask, but at that moment, Evil Eye spoke up with an annoyed voice. "Are you not ready yet, Gagrin?" "Ooh. I'm coming." Looking back at him, Gagrin gave Climb some advice. "If we get there first there will be no problem. But if the other party get here, the chance that they will find you a bother will be high. Well, if a weird person joined your party, it might not function well. So try not to be a bother." "Yes. I understand." "Then fine. Well, don't hesitate." After those words, Gagrin walked towards her comrades. Seeing that large retreating figure, Climb then turned his gaze to the bells he was given. It was normal for one to sleep when the sun set in this world. This was as lights cost money. For poor families, they wanted to save on lamp oil. Thus, the lives of villagers were healthy ones. However, cities were not like that. Firstly, magic items that could provide continual light were often used. Also, some work could only start after the sunset. The extravagant pleasure district was such a place. However, Climb was heading to a place where the words narrow alley could not even describe. Climb remained silent on the quiet road, and walked without light. The reason why he could walk in a pitch-dark lane was due to his helm, the Helm of Dark Vision. 15 meters ahead of him was the limit, but the scene he could see from the narrow slit was as bright as day. Since an armor made of mithril was not as noisy as a normal full-plate armor, it did not destroy the quiet atmosphere. The sound of the crossbow at his waist hitting his armor was not loud either. Without a person with exceptional observational skills or a great rogue, Climb's footsteps could not be heard from within the building. He had already passed the area where Sabas had picked up Suer, and he went a few blocks further and placed his hand on a nearby door. He used some force, and slowly, as if to not make sound, pushed the door open. As if knowing that it should open, the door opened as if it had no hesitation. As the door opened, the stench of stale air leaked out. It was completely black, but Climb could see without any problems, and entered silently. Closing the door with the back of his hand, Climb first checked with his ears. Confirming that he could not hear anything, Climb took the next step. He began slowly walking. While the floor underneath Climb creaked due to his weight, Climb moved one with caution. There was the possibility that the wooden floor was rotten. If there was a basement, this would be a natural pitfall trap. In the completely black room, every step Climb took kicked up dust and the smell of mold. The fortunate thing was that there were no smells other than that. There were monsters within cities. For example, the 1-meter-long giant ant or giant cockroach. Such monsters have particular smells. If there was no smell, there was no monster. Confirming his safety, Climb returned to the door, and made a slight gap. He then peeked out. Unfortunately, due to the angle, Climb could not see his goal of the brothel. Climb was observing a different building. Why was he observing a different building? The reason was simple. The building that Climb was observing was a part of the brothel. The brothel was a 2-story building, but the first nor second floor were used. It was the underground that was truly used. Yes, the store spread out under the ground. The building that Climb was observing was another entrance to the shop. This was an extremely hidden exit that they learned of because the Thieves' Guild had investigated it. Originally it might have been better to observe the normal door. However, Tia, who was excellent as a thief, had scouted the area and found that this house was the safest. If it was a person with Tia's amazing thief skills, they could observe the building with the entrance as well. However, a novice like Climb could not. Thus he was peeking out from this house. The building Climb was observing had the same appearance as the surrounding houses, and had a dilapidated look. However, there was no light leaking from it. If it was an emergency exit, there would be people there. Climb stared at the location without moving. Then, Cushion. He made a cute sneeze. He looked at his surroundings. He confirmed that there was no one there to hear him. He then pulled a thin cloth and a handkerchief from the pouch at his waist. He then removed his helm. The effect of night vision was granted by the helm. thus was cut when he removed it, and was shrouded in darkness. He was unable to see his surroundings for an instant. However, this was predicted. Climb continued his actions without panicking. Climb covered his nose with a handkerchief. The dust in this house would stick to his mucus. After repeatedly blowing his nose, and confirming that he removed any itchiness, Climb folded his handkerchief. He then tied a cloth around his mouth and nose. After covering the bottom half of his face, he put on his helm. Breathing was painful to a certain extent, but it was better than inhaling dust. If Climb's inner state was turned into words, it would be something along those lines. He then silenced himself and stared at the scene. In the midst of things, he reminisced about a certain old man. He was extremely strong, and had the same goals. However, it would cause problems to his master, and thus he could not be involved. And more importantly, he could not pull in an unknown third party. Climb believed that Sabas could be trusted, but this problem could extend to Renner, and so he could not borrow his power. Looking at the situation silently, how did he pass this boring time? Suddenly, Climb heard a strange sound. It was the sound of something large and heavy being moved. The sound was metallic. It was like a full plate-wearing warrior was being thrown aside, and Climb peeked out in a panic. However, he could not see anything from his position. Should he open the door to peek? Climb hesitated. This might have been Lady Luck shining down upon him. The door Climb was observing. It was open. While bathed in the light from inside, a man poked his head out. He was a man that did not have a good appearance. In one of his hands was a metallic shine. It was a drawn short sword. "Oi! The door is broken." The man checking the outside was probably speaking to someone on the inside. What broken door? One did not even need to think about it, it was probably the entrance. It seems that the steel door was broken by a third unknown party. Did one of the groups from the other shops come? If that was the case, why did they not inform Climb? Did they not tell him because he would be a bother? Or was it? Did the people of the noble faction move? There was a chance that a person made his move without knowing that Climb was here. Those that would do that were probably of the noble faction. This was bad. Climb panicked. If it were a person from the noble faction, the plan to keep this all under wraps would go up in smoke. Despite being troubled, Climb had to make his choice. It was what to do. If information leaked to the noble faction, the Earl would take action. Then the royal faction would have their power chipped away. Personally, Climb did not think anything about the rotten nobles who were affiliated to the brothels. However, he did not wish for the weakening of the royal faction. The weakening of the royal faction would be detrimental to Renner. He could not allow that. Climb decided so. His heart quieted down. His heart could not waver to erase Renner's enemies. The debt that was born when he was a child. And the gratitude that was raised in him thereafter. And his love. If it was for Renner, he would throw his life away. Climb drew his sword, and moved from the door. His aim was the man. While his was a metal armor of mithril, there was no way that it would make no sound. Hearing a metallic sound from behind him, the man turned back in a panic. However, everything was too late. What he saw was the flash of a blade, and the shadowy figure appearing from the darkness. As Climb swung down his sword, the man had his neck cut, and his head rolled to the floor. His short sword dropped to the floor in a clatter. Climb entered the building without looking at the fate of the man. Even though he just entered a room full of light, Climb had his vision magically improved and thus there would have no problems. The man there was already alone. His short sword and leather armor caused him to have the same figure as the man earlier. Confirming that he was not one of the people that Lockhughes had showed him, Climb closed the gap in an instant. "What? Who are you?" The man thrust his short sword out to Climb in a panic, but Climb in black armor easily repelled it. He swung down his sword. He tried to stop it with his short sword, but it was not enough not stop a blow with Climb's full body weight in it. Blowing away his short sword, Climb's sword embedded itself into the man's shoulder and into his chest. "Kia! Ah!" The man's screams reverberated, and he fell to the ground, twitching. Climb believed that it was a fatal wound, and immediately ventured further into the room. After confirming that there was no one, he climbed to the second floor. 1 minute later, confirming that there were no enemies, he returned to the door. Seeing that the collapsed man was not moving, he fled outside. Steadying his breath, he pulled the corpse outside back in. Closing the door, he took out a bag of liquid and poured its contents on the bloodstains. The special smell of the liquid in his bag mixed with the thick stench of blood, and caused the smell of blood to lessen. If one came closer it would not fool them, but if they were a distance away, they would not notice. And thus the clamorous cleanup ended, and Climb faced the entrance of the building with determination. A thick metal door had fallen onto the road. The door was wooden with metal plates nailed into it, and its center had a different metal hammered into it. The door was forced open with great strength. And the knob was twisted into a weird shape. There was no way that a human could do this with physical strength. A tool was possible. No, even with a tool, no human could do this in a short period of time. Then the next thing would be magic. There was magic that could destroy items. Using that, one could destroy hinges or the lock of the door, even a heavy one. Climb peeked inside. The path continued on straight from the open entrance, and led to a closed door. He could not feel the presence of anyone. Even if he strained his ears, he could not hear anything. However, it was certain that there was an intruder. Confirming this, Climb frantically returned to the building that was attacked. The door was opened in a rough manner, as if kicked in and had fallen inwards. The room was filled with the smell of blood. He had looked around in the building before, but he did not find any door or path leading underground. Basically it was hidden. Since Climb did not have any thief-type skills, he could not find it by looking around the room. If there was a fine powder like flour in the room, he could blow it around and see where it led. It was a method that worked by having the powder entering the cracks of the hidden door. However, he neither had the flour nor the time. While Climb was like this, the mystery invader was making his way in as well. Thus Climb took out a magic item from his pocket. It was the group of handbells that Gagarin gave him. Comparing it to the drawings he was given, he picked one of the three. The name of the magic item he selected was the Bell of Detect Secret Doors. He waved it once. A refreshing sound that could only be heard by its owner spread into the air. Reacting to the sound, a light shone from a corner of the room. It began to flicker, and showed Climb that there was a hidden door. Climb memorized that location, and turned back to the first floor. After confirming that there were no other reactions in other locations, he returned to his original location. After this would be to open it and infiltrate. But Climb narrowed his eyes and stared at the hidden door. He then sighed, and picked another handbell. The one he picked was different from the earlier one. He then swung it. It was similar to the earlier one, but the sound of this bell was different. Bell of a remove trap. It might be a waste to use it since he was not sure if there was one or not, but a warrior like Climb could not detect traps. There was also the possibility that he could not handle it alone. And while there was the limit of using it once per day, it could not be helped that he wasted here. There were other problems such as this magic item could not deactivate large or magic-based traps. However, he guessed that there were no traps of this magnitude here. And, it seems that this time, Climb was right. A heavy sound rang from behind the hidden door. Climb inserted his sword into the gap of the hidden door, and forced it open. A portion of the wooden floor rose up, and fell to the other side. Along with it was the crossbow that was set into the other side of the hidden door. The arrowhead of the bolt reflected light in a strange way, different from metal. Climb changed his location, and stared at the crossbow. Slathered onto the tip was a viscous fluid. In 9 out of 10 cases, this would be poison. If he just opened the door, a poison bolt would be released. Heaving a slight sigh of relief, Climb did not remove the crossbow, but investigated it. Unfortunately it was bolted to the ground and he could not remove it without tools. Without a choice, he removed the arrow. One of the mistakes that novices make was that despite getting it, they would injure themselves with it first. To avoid that, Climb set it in his crossbow first. Many humans would avoid using poison. Most adventurers did. This was as poison was associated with villainy. However, Climb was not one to be afraid of such things. Especially since he was a human who recognized his weakness, he was willing to use anything. The reason why he did not usually use poison was as it was not suitable for a soldier of Renner. However, not using it in such a dangerous situation was a fool's act. Finishing his preparations, Climb peered into the hidden room. It suddenly dropped into a staircase, and he could not see beyond due to his angle. The stairs and its surroundings were made of hard stone. Climb placed one foot on the steps. Out of care, he prodded each step with his sword before moving. This was an extremely dangerous act. A lone warrior trying to infiltrate a location was a crazy act. However, he had no choice. There was the option of entering from the main entrance, but the results would depend on whether the person who entered first was an ally or an enemy. Either way, he was at loggerheads with them, and people would escape from the store. There was also the method of surrounding the door and capture those escaping, but important information might be stolen by the other party. While passive, the smartest choice was to keep silent and watch, and inform the others about any occurrences. However, doing that would be detrimental to Renner. Thus he took the most dangerous option. The merits of having the man from the entrance face the enemies while he sneaked in to steal information and capture noble-like people were huge. The problem was how much a warrior like Climb could act like a thief. A few meters from the bottom of the stairs was a door. Climb pressed forward with great caution. He did not think that there would be a larger trap than a crossbow in an emergency exit, but it was common for a warrior in armor to be made powerless due to a pitfall. He had to avoid that. He proceeded at a speed that caused him to take a long time to cover short distances, but he reached the door. Climb readied his shield in front of him, and pierced the door with his sword, multiple times. Confirming that the trap did not activate on touch, he placed his ear to the wooden door, and tried to listen in. But as expected, Climb could not hear anything. He hesitated over using the magic item again, but he found his courage and grabbed the knob, and turned. However, it did not move. A lock. As Climb whispered disappointingly, he shook the last handbell among the three. Bell of open lock. The lock opened with the power of magic, and with the sound of a click, the knob turned. Climb opened the door slightly, and peeked inside. It was an open hall. In the corners of the room were cages that could fit people and wooden boxes. It was probably a storage room. But he felt that it was too big for that. Opposite was an opening without a door. Climb cleared his ears, and could hear a slight clamor. Confirming that there was no one, Climb entered the room and tried to lower his presence. When he reached the center. I thought that was the diversion, and this would be the main force. A sudden voice. A bald man showed himself from the shadow of the boxes. He did not teleport, nor become invisible, he simply was not picked up by Climb's senses. The man's upper half was bare, and his muscular body was covered in countless tattoos, to the point where you could not see his bare skin. Seeing that figure, Climb felt electricity shoot down his spine. A certain piece of information he got from Lockhews flashed in his head. It was about the people in the Eight Fingers. Climb immediately readied his crossbow, and fired without question. The poison-tipped bolt flew towards the man. His aim was the man's large torso. Would he dodge, or hide behind a wooden box? Even though there were only those two choices, the man picked the third one. The man easily grasped the bolt. He then laughed and casually threw it aside. The bolt clattered to the floor. "It's fine." Reacting to that voice, another man hiding in the shadows from across the room showed himself. He held a rapier in one hand, and had an androgynous beauty. He had a kind smile on his face as if welcoming a friend. In addition, the hard leather armor he was wearing did not have the chest portion for ladies, but had the one for men. Climb felt his throat dry. There were 3 people in the Eight Fingers that Climb could not defeat. 2 of them were here. He lowered his head at his misfortune. There were 4 shops, so why were 2 of them here? Or was this the most important shop? If that was the case, then he had to do something before the other intruder takes away the information. Climb worked his brain. But there was no other option. Why, here? While the 2 closed in on Climb, he moved to keep the 2 in his sights, and asked. There was no way they were always here. Or did they foresee that he had come here due to the other intruder? Alarm. You understand, Rived? The rapier-holding man, at least in appearance, laughed. While clicking his tongue, Climb readied his sword and shield. He's motivated, isn't he, Zero? He came all this way. Of course he would. Right, intruder? Climb did not reply. He then ran his hand across his scabbard, and spoke a word. Reacting to it was his sword. As if the power of magic dwelt in it, the blade began to shine a pale light. Hey! Magic weapon, and, bless weapon? That's quite the magic item you have there to cast 2 spells simultaneously. That means that we can get stronger after we kill him. Zero is quite carefree. Do you not think that he is strong since he has such an amazing magic item? Hey, you! Where did you get that item? If you hand it over, we might spare your life, you know? Climb did not reply. He could easily tell that they were lying. I see. Well, it's fine. What should we do? All of us at once? Or should one of us go in at a time? Lubelina. Yes, what? With an extremely light-hearted voice, the man, Lubelina, replied to the man called Zero. Hurry up and clean this up, I'll handle the other side. So true. We are troubling our guest. Understood. I have been ordered to make a blockade, and to buy time. A new voice cut in. Climb looked at him in a panic, as if asking if there were more. He had felt it strange that Lubelina used the word all, but now he understood. A man showed himself from behind the wooden boxes. He of course existed in Climb's memory. He was a man who just able to defeat Climb, and his name should be Succulent. If he were alone, there would be a chance of victory. However, under these circumstances, such a thing was impossible. However, having a slightly weaker existence join the fight was not a bad thing for Climb. This was as he was a weakness. However, Climb's naive hopes were immediately dashed. You will be on guard duty. We can't have anyone interfere after all. Understood, Lubelina-san. Receiving Lubelina's orders, Succulent headed to the walls. He had no intention of joining. And so, you will only have the two of us as your opponents, but you won't be lonely, right? What are you talking about? Seeing that Climb was not speaking, Zero spoke as if chiding Lubelina. It's obvious he will not talk. Hurry up and clean up. Well. Just wait a bit, Zero. I'm getting to that. A loud clicking sound echoed in the room. Climb did not have the freedom to look behind him. However, he could guess what it was. Surprised? It's an automatic lock. After a certain amount of time has passed, it will lock automatically. One of the works of dwarf craftsmen. It's amazing, isn't it? Lubelina's voice was very excited. Basically she was talking to buy time. Having his escape route sealed off, he had to defeat two strong people to escape. No, there was one more. Climb searched for a chance to take out his handbell. If he put a hand in his pocket he would be discovered. Basically he had one chance. He could not let it go. By the way, you look like a warrior. How did you open the door? Who knows? Lubelina's face warped. Ha 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 ha. She burst into laughter. Reacting here, you are an idiot. Despite the fact that saying nothing was the answer, you reacted and I hit the bullseye. Zero, he has some sort of item. It can open locks. Then we will not let him have that chance. Zero stepped forward. His gait was very forceful, as if he were a king welcoming a challenger. On the other hand, Climb kept his sword and shield ready and slowly retreated. His aim was the wall. It could not be helped that the two were attacking, but he could at least narrow their range. However, Climb's action was read by the two. They closed in from the side, so he was forced to keep his eyes on the entrance. Running back to the entrance was a foolish move. He would be attacked from behind. So Climb decided to attack Lubelina first, and moved. Hit me first? Good choice. His chances of victory between Lubelina and Zero were higher facing Lubelina. However, to Lubelina, Climb's decision was a dissatisfying one. Lubelina closed in with a thud, and an annoying screeching sound could be heard from Climb's helm. Hey, nice armor. Ignoring the vibrations, Climb swung his sword. However, he did not reach Lubelina. She had moved to a place his sword could not reach. Her speed was at another level. No, while Climb thought that, to Gazef or Gagrin, this was not much. However, it was Climb that was fighting. It was like trying to catch a feather that was floating in the air. Climb thought that and glared at Lubelina. What a pity. I was trying to pierce your cheek. The attack to his cheek was not a miss nor a result of Climb trying to dodge, but was aimed for. It was based on the idea that an attack to the cheek would not be fatal, and was a good indicator of Lubelina's personality. Oi, if you pay too much attention here, you'll be in danger, you know? Gawk. Climb, who was paying attention to Lubelina, felt an impact on his shoulder, and stumbled sideways. He raised his shield and glared out from behind it. In his limited vision from the slit in his helm, he saw Zero! Exclamation mark. Matching the timing when Zero stepped in, Climb swung his sword down. Zero hit Climb's sword, causing it to change direction, and he plunged his fist into Climb's stomach. There was a loud sound. It was the sound of metal hitting metal. Gah! Yes, now here. Climb staggered backwards and heard the sound of someone running near his legs. He swung his sword in that direction. However, there was no sensation of hitting anything. There was no way he could hit anything by blindly waving his sword. The calm warrior in him screamed that, but there was the chance that if he did not swing, he would eat another attack. Uselessly waving his sword wasted energy, but he had to do it. Climb's face warped underneath his helm, and just as he tried to locate his enemies, he saw something move in the corner of his eyes. He tried to raise his shield in a panic. The sound of metal rang at the same time as he received a strong impact on his chest. While staggering backwards, he covered himself with his shield and strained his gaze. As predicted, the one standing there was Zero. The impact on his chest affected his breathing. Blunt hits easily passed into his body, dealing damage. He could deal with it as his full plate armor was enchanted, but he had accumulated a lot of injuries. Lubelina, you are playing too much. There are others we have to kill. Eh? Yes. There are invaders. I forgot. Lubelina's speech had some hostility in it. Basically she was getting serious. Climb frantically readied his breathing. He could feel the sweat under his clothes. He had been in real fights multiple times, but a fight like this where he could easily die was a first. Climb felt his spirit being doused with great force. And his unnecessary actions and the damage he received stole his strength. I tire of this. Even you can kill this guy safely when he's tired. Join in, succulent. Yes, Zero-san. The man who was watching until now left the wall, and moved to surround him. He drew his short sword, and its blade had a slimy glisten. Climb's left hand down at his side. He strongly felt the weight of his shield. The heat from his shoulder told him that it was not broken, and he had pins and needles. He felt the same pain at his chest and stomach. He was surrounded, and they were closing in. When they were close enough, the three would definitely steal his life. Climb had a bitter taste in his mouth. Was this the taste of death? Climb felt his body shaking. Was his heart crying because he could not return to Renner's side? In front of death, humans would have the heart of martyrs. It was a similar feeling to surrender in a battle. Such people would lose their lives in the next attack. This was a fact. People stole the lives of people, and there was no way a person who surrendered can take the lives of others. However, Climb did not loosen his grip on his sword. He had received this sword from Renner. He could not let go of it. The figure of the woman he loved appeared in his head. Climb suddenly removed his helm, and dropped it to the floor. The helm clattered to the floor. He then whispered an apology to his master. Well. Who are you? The three from the Eight Fingers carefully looked at Climb's actions, wondering what meaning they held. It seemed to be the actions of someone who gave up, but the fire in Climb's eyes was not of someone who accepted death. Climb removed the cloth covering his nose and spat out the taste of death that accumulated in his mouth. Why do I feel as if I have already lost? Climb mockingly laughed. It was directed at his fate that brought him to this impossible situation. Climb put more energy into himself, and raised his shield to his shoulder. He could bear with something like pain. Yes, Climb was always under pressure. He bared with pain, underwent strict training, ignored the mocking laughs, and stared at the future where he would lose the woman he loved. He bared with it and moved forward one step at a time. While talented people could fly up the steps, Climb went up one by one, and this took time. Then he should take this as a staircase for him to climb. He should win as always, and continue to stand behind Renner. Climb's immature face had a bold smile on it. Zero and Lubelina felt just a slight amount of hesitation. Until now they had a sure case of victory. They felt that it would be an absolute victory. Spell tattoo activate. Zero chanted his keywords, and his tattoos began to leak light. Activating the second spell tattoo, you are serious aren't you? Succulent fallback. He has become a little dangerous. Nothing seems to have changed though. That's why you are beneath us. With a roar, Zero exploded with heat. His body turned red, and one could see he had gotten much more powerful. I'll go first, Zero. Lubelina stepped in with vigor, her rapier heading towards Climb's exposed face. A serious Lubelina who was not playing could easily pierce armor. While Climb's armor was very hard, she was confident of piercing it. However, there was uncertainty in Lubelina's head. It was the thought that she could not pierce both the shield and his armor. If her thrust was stopped, she would be at an overwhelming disadvantage. That was why she aimed from Climb's defenseless head. If he stopped it with his shield, then she would pierce it harder. If he hit it with his sword, she would slip past and pierce. In front of the rapier known as heart penetrate, Climb took action to evade. Lubelina's face warped into a cold smile. She would aim upwards and pierce his head. An instant later, she felt that her sword had pierced flesh. However, there was less blood than she expected. What? Lubelina raised a gasp of surprise. Heart penetrate had pierced Climb's cheek. At the same time, Climb moved his head, forcing the blade deeper. After the blade reached his other cheek, he moved his jaw, and bit down. The feeling of the harsh grating of teeth reverberated through heart penetrate and reached Lubelina. "I won't get you recover." With blood spitting out from his mouth, Climb went over to Lubelina's body, and swung his sword with full force. "This is bad." When she tried to retrieve heart penetrate, the jaw strength of a man biting down and ignoring the pain was stronger. Giving up, Lubelina tried to let go of her rapier, but it was too late. Climb's sword headed to Lubelina, and if she was his only opponent, he could have won. Climb's body was blown away with a loud sound. The man wearing armor floated into the air, and was blown back several meters. That was testament to how powerful that blow was. "You lost focus." Still in the position where he punched Climb with his fist, Zero spoke to Lubelina. "Ah, you saved me, Zero." Lubelina picked up heart penetrate off the floor. It had fallen from Climb's cheek due to the impact of Zero's attack. Blood, saliva, and some bite marks. Being able to leave marks on a magical sword, just what sort of jaw strength did he have? Lubelina looked at the fallen Climb, and was faced with a surprising scene. Climb was slowly standing up. While he received Zero's attack, he could still stand. Such humans were extremely rare. "Zero. Aren't you the one fooling around?" "No, I am surprised. Due to the armor or some other reason, he's not dead." With a cough, Climb stood up and spat out blood. He was half dead, but half alive. Those were the best words to describe him. His eyes were empty, and his hands hung by his sides. His face was pierced, and he looked terrible. However, he still had the will to fight. "I'll kill you. You. Succulent, what are you looking at? Join in." "Why, yes." As Lubelina screamed with a voice that showed that the gap had narrowed, the three closed in. He could hear a voice through his buzzing ears. As if reacting to that, Climb raised his sword as if welcoming them. He had almost no chance of victory, but he could not lose. He had to win and return to Renner's side. In his shaking vision, Climb frantically locked onto his enemies. His sword was wavering, but he could still fight. Climb glared at them, and "One versus many is not something I can commend you for." It was a quiet voice. Even though they were in a battle of life and death, everyone stopped moving. And though this would be impossible, their eyes left their opponents and looked towards that voice. Despite showing such a defenseless posture, they did not attack. And everyone felt an overwhelming pressure from that voice, and confirming his presence took precedent over anything. Even if it meant looking away from their enemies. At the point where their gazes met, was an old man. There was not a single speck of dust on the tailcoat-wearing butler. His figure made one think that he was in his master's mansion, and he felt extremely natural. However, he had the thick scent of blood, and one could almost see a red fog surrounding him. While bathed in the gazes of everyone, the old man took a step. They heard the sound of leather hitting the floor. He did not do anything. He simply stepped into the room. They could not feel killing intent nor hostility from him. However, Zero, Lubelina and Succulent felt suppressed by an invisible force, and unconsciously took a step back. Just by him stepping in, the room felt smaller. Climb did not understand why that man would be here. So, he spoke. "Say Mashtar." About to say the old man, Sabah's name, Climb shouted to correct himself. Since Succulent was here, Sabah was already exposed. But since Climb did not know that, he tried to hide his identity. At that thoughtful shout, Sabah made a wry smile. "Now. It seems you have helped my disciple quite a bit." Sabah stretched out his arm and beckoned them. "I shall be your opponent. Now, come." Overlord First Half Chapter 72, The Capital City of the Kingdom Part 12. The door to the drawing room slowly opened. Its hinges were regularly oiled and it should have swung open smoothly, but for some reason, The motion of the doors seemed unusually sluggish and ponderous, as though the door was fighting a pressure differential between the air on the inside and the outside of the room. It was as though their speed was matching the way Sebas felt. If the door had truly read his heart, then Sebas would have much rather it had not opened at all. However, it did open, revealing the unchanged interior of the drawing room to Sebas' eyes. However, unlike most times, there were three powerful existences inside the room. One was a light blue warrior. One was a demon. And finally, "Please forgive my lateness. I am deeply sorry to keep you waiting." At the entrance, Sebas bowed deeply, almost to the point of reverence, to the existence sitting behind the desk. In the high-ranking position as the land steward of Nazarick, there was only one person who could be said to be above him. The person sitting there was of course Sebas' master. He was one of the absolute 41 supreme beings. Einzulgon. This almighty fighting force was also the ruler of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. Dim red pinpoints of light played lazily within the hollow orbits of his eye sockets. Even from his bowed position, Sebas could sense those lights sizing him up from head to toe. The movements of the air told him that Einz had waved expansively, in a leisurely manner. "It is fine. Think nothing of it, Sebas. The fault lies with me, being that I did not communicate my arrival in a timely manner. But let us dispense with these pleasantries. How can you speak from over there with your head bowed? I bid you enter." "Yes." Sebas's head was still lowered as he responded to the solemn voice. He looked up, and then slowly stepped forward. A trail of frost ran down his spine. That was because his keen senses told him of carefully concealed hostility and killing intent. He slowly shifted his gaze. Cocytus and Demiurge were not holding any weapons, and were not paying attention to Sebas. However, that was from a normal person's point of view. Sebas was abundantly aware of it. Firstly, Cocytus maintained a distance such that when he drew his weapons, he could blow away Sebas in a heartbeat. He was also matching Sebas' every movement. In addition, Demiurge was standing next to Einz, and held the perfect distance to become Einz's shield in case of emergency. Both of them held the greatest caution towards Sebas. Their vigilance was not the reaction one would have to an ally. Sebas could understand why they felt that way. He felt a weighty pressure upon him and he was afraid that everyone would hear the thunderous beating of his heart. "I think you should stop there." Demiurge's relaxed voice rang through the air and halted Sebas in his tracks. Sebas was some distance away from his master. It did not make speaking difficult. However, under normal circumstances, Einz would consider Sebas to be too far away and ask him to approach. This time, Einz had not said so. This sense of separation crushed Sebas until he could no longer breathe. Incidentally, Solution had entered the room with Sebas, but she was standing by the door, awaiting orders. Then, Einz snapped his bony fingers, though how he had done so was not apparent. "A question for you, Sebas. Need I explain why I am here?" Sebas felt a jolt down his spine. While feeling the sweat wet his back, he looked down slightly and solemnly opened his mouth. "No, there is no need for that." "Then, I have a question which I would like you to answer in your own words, Sebas. While I did not receive a report from you concerning this matter, is it true that you picked up an adorable little pet recently?" "Yes." "Then, could you explain why you did not report the matter to me?" "Yes." Sebas' shoulders shuddered and he stared at the ground. What could he say to avoid the situation developing in the worst possible way? His head was full of such thoughts. Einz leaned back into his throne as he watched the silent Sebas. The creaking of the chair as he did so sounded exceptionally loud in the confines of the room. "What's the matter, Sebas? You seem to be sweating heavily. Shall I lend you a handkerchief?" With a grand flourish, Einz produced a pure white handkerchief from nowhere. He grasped it between his index and middle fingers and tossed it towards Sebas. The handkerchief unfolded and spread in midair, landing gently upon the ground. Einz pointed at it. "You are permitted to use it." "Yes." Sebas took a step towards Einz and picked up the handkerchief. Then, he froze. "That handkerchief is not stained with your pet's blood. I simply felt that it was unsightly to have you covered in sweat." "Yes. Please forgive my shameful display, Einz-sama." Sebas spread the handkerchief and wiped at the cold sweat which beaded his brow. "Now, let me ask. Why did you not submit a report on that matter? I wish to ask why you disregarded an order from me. Is the word of Einzulgo not enough to bind your actions?" Those words shook the air in the room. Sebas hurriedly answered. Certainly not. I simply believed that there was no need to trouble you with a report concerning such a small matter, Einsama. Silence filled the air. Sabas was bathed in murderous intent from three sources. They came from Cocytus, Demiurge, and Solution. All three of them would immediately fall on Sabas if their master so ordered. Sabas did not fear death. It would be his utmost joy to die for Nazarick. Yet, the thought of being executed as a traitor terrified even the stoic Sabas. That was because there was no greater shame for those created by the 41 supreme beings than to be counted as a turncoat and subsequently eliminated. After some time, and after much sweat had beaded on Sabas' forehead, Ein spoke. In other words, all this was an exercise of your foolish judgment. Is that correct? Yes. It is as you say, Ein-sama. Please forgive my foolish mistake. I see. I believe I understand now. As Sabas lowered his head in apology, Eins's emotionless voice filtered into his ears. The fact that Eins had not ordered a summary execution slightly eased the tension in the room. If there were levels to hostility, it seemed to have gone down several levels. However, Sabas could not relax. Before he could do so, Eins said something that made Sabas' heart lurch within his chest. Solution. Fetch Sabas' pet. Understood. The door quietly closed behind Solution as she moved to carry out her orders. Sabas' keen senses informed him that Solution was heading away from the door. There was an audible gurgle as Sabas gulped. Here were the three people, Eins, Cocytus, and Demiurge. There were anthropomorphic beings. They did not even bother casting an illusion to hide themselves. Basically, they wanted to show Tsuer their true forms. Did they not mind being seen, or would they do something when seen? Soon, Sabas sensed two people approaching. They were approaching this room from the distance. What should I do? Sabas' eyes shifted and he focused on the air. Once she arrived here, Sabas would have to make a choice. And there could only be one answer he could give. Sabas' gaze moved to Demiurge, who was observing him. Then to Eins. And then, he looked powerlessly at the ground. There was knocking, and then the door opened. As expected, there were two women there. They were Solution and Tsuer. I have brought her. Sabas had his back to Tsuer, but he could hear her gasp from the entrance. Was she shocked to see Demiurge, a demon in the flesh? Was she shaken by seeing Cocytus, the gigantic blue insectoid? Was she terrified by Eins, the avatar of death itself? Or was it all of the above? The Guardian's displeasure intensified as Tsuer made her appearance. That was because to some extent, Tsuer was the physical incarnation of Sabas' sins. It would seem she was trembling from the hostility directed at her. The hostility of the Guardians, who were easily the most powerful beings in this world, could instill a primal terror in the hearts of the weak. It was surprising that Tsuer had not broken down in tears by now. Sabas did not look back, but he could clearly feel Tsuer's gaze boring into him from behind. Her reservoirs of courage were derived from Sabas himself. Demiurge, Cocytus. Stop. As Eins's quiet voice echoed through the room, there was a change in the room's mood. No, it would be better to say that the hostility directed at Tsuer had vanished. After reprimanding the two guardians, Eins slowly extended his left hand to Tsuer. Then he turned his palm to the ceiling, and beckoned her over. Enter, O pet human that Sabas has picked up Tsuer. As though controlled by those words, Tsuer took step after step forward on trembling legs. That you did not choose to flee shows courage. Or did Solution tell you something? Did she say that Sabas' fate lay within your hands? Tsuer was shuddering all over and did not answer. Sabas felt the gaze directed at his back grow stronger. Said gaze made Tsuer's will abundantly clear, more than any number of words could explain. After entering the room, Tsuer walked up to Sabas' side with no hesitation whatsoever. Cocytus shifted position to stand behind Tsuer, awaiting orders. Tsuer grabbed the corner of Sabas' coat. Sabas suddenly recalled how she had clung to his clothing in that alley. At the same time, he was filled with regret. If he had handled things better, the situation would not have come to this. Demiurge glared coldly at Tsuer. Nea. And the sound of snapping fingers rang forth. Demiurge understood the meaning behind his master's gesture, and said no more. It is fine. Pay it no heed, Demiurge. As praise for the courage to face me without fleeing, I will forgive the rudeness she has shown to myself, the ruler of Nazarick. My sincerest apologies. Eins nodded magnanimously at Demiurge's apology. Ah, yes. Ainz leaned back into the chair, making it creak. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Ainz Ulgon, the master of Sabos over there." Indeed. Ainz Ulgon, one of the 41 supreme beings who ruled Sabos. Being addressed by the master to whom he owed absolute loyalty was his greatest delight. Yet, for some reason, Sabos' joy was less than he had imagined. It merely made his spine tingle. As Sabos was pondering this matter, both sides were still conversing. "Ah. I am. It is fine, Tsur. I know a little about you, and I have no interest in learning more. Stand there and remain silent. Soon you will know why you have been summoned." "Ah. Yes. Now then." The points of red light in Ainz's eye sockets shifted. "Sabos, I have a question for you. I told you not to attract attention with your actions, did I not?" "Yes. And despite my clear instructions to you, you got yourself into trouble because of this meaningless little woman, am I wrong?" "No, you are not." The word meaningless made Tsur shudder, but Sabos only answered the question and made no other response. "At that time, did you not think you were ignoring the orders I had given?" "Yes. My thoughtlessness has displeased you, Ainz-sama. I shall reflect upon my sins, be more careful in the future, and I shall not make the same mistake again." "It is fine." "Huh?" I said, "It is fine." Ainz shifted, and the chair creaked once more. "People are not perfect, and mistakes are to be expected. Sabos, I shall forgive this trifling mistake of yours." "Thank you, Ainz-sama. However, mistakes must be rectified, by death." The air in the room suddenly grew dense, and the temperature felt as though it had fallen by several degrees. No, that was not it. Only Sabos felt that way. The two other guardians, Solution, and Ainz were still calm. Sabos gulped. What did his master mean by death? No, that went without saying. The thoughts as I expected and I hoped not weighed heavily on Sabos, but still, he asked. "What do you mean?" What I mean is that I expect you to eliminate the source of your mistake in order to wipe the slate clean. How can you be the representative of everyone else when you leave the origin of your error untouched? You are the land steward of Nazarick, and one who stands at the head of the manservants. If you do not handle the matter appropriately. Sabos exhaled. Then he took in another breath. Even when faced with a mighty foe, Sabos' breathing remained calm and regular. Yet, it was now frantic, like a small animal that had run into a predator. "Sabos, are you a loyal hound who obeys the orders of my exalted self, of the 41 supreme beings? Or are you a man who believes that your will alone is righteous?" "This. I do not need your answer. Show me your conclusion." Sabos closed his eyes, and then opened them again. He hesitated for only a moment. No, it would be better to say that he had spent an entire moment hesitating. It was enough time for Cocytus, Demiurge and Solution to show hostility. After that long, interminable moment, Sabos finally made his decision. Sabos was the land steward of Nazarick. He was nothing else beyond that. His foolish hesitation had brought about these consequences. If he had pleaded with his master earlier, the outcome might have been different. All this was his fault. A hard luster filled Sabos' eyes. They gleamed like polished steel. Then, he turned to Tsur. The hand clinging to him let go. Tsur looked at Sabos' face. She had probably guessed his decision by now. She smiled, and closed her eyes. That was not a look of despair, or fear. She had accepted what would happen next, had accepted her impending fate with all the grace of a martyr. Sabos' movements did not waver. His heart had long since descended into the abyss. In his place stood a steely servant who had pledged his utmost fealty to Nazarick. That being the case, there was no reason not to obey the absolute order handed down by his master. Sabos' hand formed into a fist, and then he struck at Tsur's head, seeking to grant her the mercy of an instant death. And then something hard intercepted his fist. "What are you doing?" Sabos' unhappy voice was directed at the one who stopped his fist, Cocytus. Cocytus had reached out a hand from behind Tsur and stopped Sabos' fist. Was Cocytus a traitor, given that he had blocked a strike which the Supreme One had ordered? And then, the doubts in Sabos' heart were immediately answered. "Stand down, Sabos." Sabos was anxious and doubtful, but he was still halfway through another punch when he heard Ainz's order. The strength he had channeled into his hand dissipated in an instant. His master had not censured Cocytus, but had instead told Sabas to stop. That indicated that he had also arranged for Cocytus' interdiction of Sabas' strike. Indeed, all this had been planned ahead of time. The fact was that his master wished to verify Sabas' intentions. Now that her life was no longer in danger, her wound-up emotions snapped inside her. Suer's body convulsed with shudders as the tears streamed from her eyes. She very nearly collapsed from the shaking of her legs, but Sabas did not reach out to support her. What else could he do, now that things had come to this? Ainz paid no heed to Suer's fear and began addressing Cocytus. Cocytus. Was that blow intended to take that woman's life? There is no doubt that it would have been instantly fatal. Then I declare that Sabas' loyalty is no longer in question. Thank you, Sabas. Yes. Sabas bowed, his face stiff. Demiurge. Yes. Any objections? I have none. Cocytus? None. Very well. Then, let us move on to the next item. Ainz snapped his fingers and rose to his feet. He swept his hand grandly through the air, causing his cape to flutter. Thanks to the efforts of Sabas and the others, I feel we have gathered sufficient information. There is no reason to linger in this place. We shall vacate this property immediately and return to Nazarick. Sabas, I will leave the disposal of this woman to you. Since I have already verified your loyalty, I will not object to whatever you wish to do, or at least, I would like to say that, but some considerations must be made before releasing her. Allowing her to go free and speak of Nazarick would be troublesome, do you not agree, Demiurge? It is as you say. Then, what should we do? Should we not make sure of things first? Indeed. Sabas, we will decide Suer's fate later. I would prefer not to kill her, but I cannot guarantee that. While saying that, Ainz tilted his head in perplexity. It was an attitude that said that he did not know how to handle Suer. Sabas could not hide his surprise at the fact that the highest authority in Nazarick, Ainz, could not immediately make a decision. Ainz-sama. Are we retreating from this house, from the royal capital, because of my mistake? Perhaps. Perhaps not. Like I said just now, I feel we have learned everything we can from this area. There would be no gain in continuing to stay here. This is a safer course of action, according to my calculations. Sabas audibly gulped. This action was absurd, but even if he were to pull out, he had to do one thing. I have an absurd request but... Ainz raised his hand, and cut off Sabas' words. I cannot hear it. Even if I hear it I cannot answer immediately. The time has exceeded its limits. I am worried about Hora and Shaltir who have been left alone in Nazarick, should they act on their own. Firstly, I shall return to Nazarick and then listen to a detailed explanation. Your request will be after that. Understood. Greater teleportation. Ainz almost immediately activated magic and disappeared. He had probably returned to Nazarick using teleportation magic. Demiurge had seen him off, and turned to solution. Bring that human to a different room. Yes, Demiurge-sama. No, I shall bring her. There is no problem. Right, Demiurge? Indeed. You have the right of it, Sabas. A thin, fiendish smile appeared on Demiurge's face, and he gracefully gestured to the door. Please, carry on. Please come with me. Yes. Suer replied hoarsely as she followed shakily behind Sabas. After leaving the room, the hallway echoed with their footsteps. The two of them walked in silence, and soon they reached the door to Suer's room. It was nearby, but the journey there seemed to have taken a very long time. When they reached the door, Sabas finally made up his mind and quietly spoke. I will not apologize. Sabas sensed Suer tremble from where she was following behind him. However, the fact that my master ordered me to dispose of you was my fault. If I had dealt with the matter in a better way, it would not have come to this. Sabas-sama. I believe that such things will not happen again, but I cannot say that it will not. I am a loyal servant of Ainz-sama, of the 41 Supreme Beings. Even if the same thing happens again, I will respond in the same way. So I hope you will stay in the human world and find happiness there. I will try to seek Ainz-sama's approval. Given that Ainz-sama can modify memories, let Ainz-sama erase your unpleasant memories and then live well. How about my memories of you, Sabas-sama? I will ask Ainz-sama to erase your memories of me as well. After all, remembering me will do you no good. And what is good for me? Sabas sensed a fierce determination in Suer's voice, and turned around. The woman before Sebas stared defiantly at him, and although her eyes were brimming with tears, they had an unshakable look in them. Sebas felt his heart waver, and he thought about how to persuade her. It was true that Nazarick was a wonderful place, and one could say it was a land blessed by the gods. But the only ones who thought that way were Sebas and the other people who had been created by the 41 supreme beings, as well as the vessels of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. Sebas did not think that human beings, who lacked talent and power, could find happiness in that land. There, the value of Suer's life would not be worth much. Could the strange existences known as weak humans bear that? The happiness of humans lied in the land of humans. Sebas believed that. In Nazarick, your life will not be viewed as much. Are you still asking what differences there will be? Become happy in the human world. I have already found happiness. Sebas felt that Suer was quite pitiable as he heard her ironclad statement. If you can do something in hell, you can feel slightly satisfied, but you will be in hell. The happiness in hell cannot compare to the happiness in the human world. She had seen the worst the world could offer, so she had taken joy in even a slightly less wretched environment. That was all. However, Suer laughed at his observation. I do not feel that this place is hell. I can eat my fill here and I have a decent job. I grew up in a small village, and life was hard there. For a moment, Suer glanced into the distance. Then she recovered, and looked straight at Sebas. Our stomachs cried out in hunger, and no matter how hard we worked the fields, our Lord took almost everything and left us with precious little to eat. In addition, we were nothing more than toys to our Lord. No matter how much I cried and screamed, he kept laughing as he raped me. He laughed at me. I understand. Suer's smile was twitching as Sebas pulled her over, enfolding her within his embrace before gently putting an arm over her trembling shoulders. Just like before, Sebas could feel Suer's tears soak his clothes as she broke down. What she had seen and lived through was not all of the world. Yet, to Suer, that was the sum total of the human experience. Sebas fell into thought. What was the best course of action? He confirmed that there was only one. I have heard that the lizardmen have become one of Kokaida's subordinates. You might be able to become mine in a similar manner. Then. Still in Sebas' embrace, Suer raised her head. I understand, Suer. I will plead with Ein-sama to let me take you to Nazarick. Thank you very much. If Sebas-sama had reported about me when you picked me up, I might have been removed while still in that terrible state. Ein-sama is a generous master. I do not believe that he would do such a thing. However, that is not absolute. Sebas said nothing. The master whom he gave his loyalty to and a pitiful woman. It was true he tried to avoid having to make a choice between them. Sebas let the strength fade from the arm on his shoulder, but Suer refused to leave. She clung tightly to Sebas' clothes, looking up to him with dewy eyes. There seemed to be a look of expectation in those eyes. That was what Sebas' instincts told him, but he did not know what she was hoping for. Still, he remembered that he had to confirm one thing first. Allow me to make sure this. You have no attachment to the human world? Do you not wish to return to your home? Even being taken to Nazarick did not entail being completely separated from human society. That was because he was not taking Suer there to be a prisoner. However, that possibility could not be entirely ruled out. I would like to see my little brother again. But more than that, I don't want to remember all the things in the past. I understand. Then, go to your room. I will go and meet Ein-sama once more. Yes. Suer let go of Sebas' clothes, and then she wrapped her arms around Sebas' neck. Sebas was taken by surprise. Even from the viewpoint of an outlandishly powerful monk, they were perfect movements. No, he thought that because his heart wavered. Suer paid no attention to the outwardly expressionless, yet inwardly conflicted Sebas, and stood on the tips of her toes. And then, Suer's lips met those of Sebas. The moment of intimacy was exceedingly brief. Suer's lips soon left his. It was a little prickly, Suer said as she stepped back, touching her lips with the fingers of both hands. It was the first time I was so happy to be kissed. Sebas had nothing to say. However, Suer looked intently at Sebas, and then smiled sweetly. Then, I shall wait here. Thank you for your concern, Sebas-sama. Oh. I understand. Please wait here for a while. Is something the matter? It would appear your face is red, no? It is nothing, Demiurge. That was the first thing Sebas heard when he returned to the room. Upon hearing someone comment on the redness of his face, Sebas calmed his breathing back to a deep and even rhythm. If he allowed his consternation from just now to show on his face, what right would he have to receive his master as his servant? Sebas resisted the impulse to touch his lips, instead putting on the expression of the perfect servant. About 2 minutes later, space distorted. By the time the distortion had faded, someone stood in its place. Naturally, that person was Ainz. Sebas, Cocytus, Demiurge and Solution knelt as one and bowed to him. "Thank you for the warm welcome." Ainz waved the staff of Ainz Ulgon, which the blackness of it could elicit pain from those who viewed it. He then moved behind the desk and sat down on the chair. "You may rise." The four of them straightened up at once, all looking at Ainz. He seemed to be in a very good mood. "Let's get down to business. Demiurge, this just goes to show you are worrying too much. I didn't believe for a moment that Sebas had betrayed us. You are all too cautious. My deepest apologies. And I am grateful that you would accept my pointless suggestion, which contradicted your own judgment. That's fine. I also make mistakes from time to time. However, I can relax when I know you are paying attention and checking, Demiurge. Besides, you made that suggestion because you were worried about me. I am not so petty as to censure you for that." Ainz moved his gaze from the deeply bowing Demiurge. "So what is your wish, Sebas?" "Before that, I would like to ask Ainz-sama something." Pausing, Sebas glanced at Ainz's expression before continuing. "How shall we deal with Tsur?" Ainz thought for a bit, wondered why Sebas asked of such a thing, and nodded when he came to an answer. I recall that letting the girl go would result in news about Nazarick getting out, am I correct?" Demiurge nodded under Ainz's gaze. "Indeed, that is so. Ainz-sama, how shall we handle this matter?" "Then we should take the time to edit her memories. Thanks to a certain priest, brainwashing might be impossible, but I have become quite skillful at manipulating memories. Ainz-sama, I feel that killing her outright would be more convenient." Solution nodded at Demiurge's suggestion. After seeing their reactions, Ainz sank into contemplation. Since the two of them felt the same way, he should probably do it. Perhaps. Sebas began to panic. Once his master made a decision, asking him to change it would not be easy. While Ainz had forgiven Sebas, Demiurge, Cocytus and Solution would surely think very poorly of him now. Carelessly voicing his opposition would definitely incur their ire. However, he had to make his proposal right now. Sebas opened his mouth, preparing to speak in opposition to Demiurge's opinion. However, he ended up not doing so, because Ainz spoke first. "That's enough, Demiurge. I am not fond of killing when it doesn't benefit me. Or rather, once you kill the weak, you cannot use them any longer. You must consider that they might still be of use as long as they still live." Sebas swallowed a sigh of relief. Tsur had not yet been condemned to death. That said, it was still a possibility. "I understand. Then how about having her work at the ranch managed by my subordinates?" "Ah, to handle the livestock." Ainz laughed, thinking that it did not suit Demiurge. In response, Demiurge returned a mirthful smile. Sebas silently watched the two. While his master was enjoying the conversation, it would be foolish to interrupt. If handled poorly, he would earn Ainz's displeasure, and Tsur would be done for. "Thanks to your ranch, we have become able to use scrolls without worrying about the remaining stock. An extremely noteworthy achievement. I will continue to rely on you." "Thank you very much." "That's right, have you considered mincing them and using them as rations? We need to improve the quality of Nazarick's provisions." Ainz's gaze left Demiurge and he began to stare off into the distance. It then returned. "Unfortunately, the quality of their meat is poor, and they are not up to standard. Using them in glorious Nazarick would be a little." Demiurge smiled, indicating that he did not approve. "Still, we can chop up the dead beasts and feed them to the others. Of course, they will not eat the meat if you feed it to them directly, so we have to mince it up first." "I see. Is it a type of taru? Then Tora should be goats? Do goats eat meat?" "It seems they are omnivorous." Is that so? Well, I do not know a lot about goats, and they might be unique to this world." Ainz nodded in understanding. "However, I do not believe that the commander of Nazarick is suited for farm work. Should it be a bother, you can assign it to someone else instead, you know? There are other jobs that you must do." "No, this is a job I would like to do. And it is my pride to allow Ainsama to have plenty of materials for scrolls. I see. Ain smiled happily. On the other hand, Sebas was frowning inside. Sebas and Demiurge were both servants of the Supreme Beings, and Sebas knew Demiurge's personality well. Someone like Demiurge would never run an ordinary ranch. Then what was the ranch that was raising goats that could eat meat? A brilliant flash of light raced through Sebas' mind. This was because he had guessed what sort of creatures Demiurge was raising. Could he send Suer to such a place? Indeed, Demiurge would probably guarantee the safety of her life. However, the same could not be said of her mental state. While the goats are pitiful, they are working for Nazarick. There is no greater happiness than this. Isn't that right, Demiurge? For just an instant, Demiurge sent an inquisitive gaze towards Ains, and nodded. It is just as you say, Ainsama. Then I shall continue to leave Demiurge in charge of the goats. Compared to myself who knows nothing about them, you can utilize them far better than I can. Yes, Ainsama. So Ainsama knows nothing about them? Ains's face twitched slightly in response to Demiurge's strange question, but he nodded in agreement. Well, that is how it is. Understood. I shall handle the management of the goats perfectly. Demiurge had a full smile. It was the face of a subordinate who had received tacit agreement from his master. He took a breath. If he was to speak, he had to do it now. Sebas opened his mouth. Ainsama. What is it, Sebas? I would like to have Tsuer work for us in the great underground tomb of Nazarick. What? Tsuer can cook. In all of Nazarick, only the head chef and the sous chef can prepare food, excepting Yuri and the others. After considering the future needs of Nazarick, I feel that it would be better if we had more people who could cook. I also feel that it would be very beneficial to test the ability of humans to work in Nazarick. It would set an excellent precedent to show that even inferior life forms like humans can render service unto Nazarick. In addition, I get it. I understand, Sebas. Ains raised his hand to interrupt Sebas' non-stop rambling about the many uses of Tsuer. I know, Sebas. I am fully aware of what you're trying to say. Indeed, I have thought in the past that we have too few people who are able to cook. It is a problem worth pondering. But Ainsama, can she really prepare food which is worthy of Nazarick? Sebas glared resentfully at Demiurge for a moment. In response, Demiurge merely smiled. You bastard. Sebas swallowed the curse before he could speak it. Even if Ains had forgiven Sebas, Demiurge had not. Therefore, he was striving to be as contrary as possible to Sebas' wishes while they decided the disposition of Tsuer. That must be it. In fact, that thought was completely correct. Cocytus was surprised and his brain was working harder than even Sebas. Solution believed that Sebas should be punished, and by Demiurge no less. He does have a point. What do you think, Sebas? Tsuer mainly prepares basic dishes. As for whether they are suitable for Nazarick, that is a little difficult to answer. Basic dishes. I doubt Nazarick will require steamed potatoes or the like. Demiurge spoke with the hint of a mocking smile. Since she can make simple dishes, should she ask the head chef she can master others? I believe that we should focus on the future. Then I would love to have her help prepare food in my ranch. Making mincemeat is hardly a trivial task. The two of them bickered back and forth. Ains watched their conversation. At the same time, he looked beyond them. So, where are we going today? The fire giants. The ice dragons. Albert's son, I believe we agreed to farm the fire giant boss Surtur for his rare drops. Did you forget? I'd like to ask if you forgot, Touch-san. There are people who need to hunt ice dragons in order to meet their job change prerequisites, aren't there? Indeed, that is so. But Yama-iko-san needs the drops to get stronger. I'm okay with. Are you referring to the primordial fire? Then the primordial ice is just as essential, no? That being the case, we should hunt the dragons. We can raise drop rates with a cash item. Surtur has a lower drop rate than the dragons, so don't you think we ought to beat him first? So you're telling me to shell out for a cash item, then? Well, about that. How about fighting lewd monsters like succubi in the abyss? Shut up, little bro. Well, if we're going after demon types, we ought to fight the 7 Lords of Sin. Granted, we might need to make a lot of preparations. Touch-san, I don't think you should be so selfish. Don't you think we'd be more efficient fighting the ice dragons, given the members who showed up? You're the selfish one, Albert-san. Besides, games aren't all about efficiency. Would the strongest mage and the strongest warrior please stop fighting? They've always been like that. Ever since they recruited me. Touch-san must have been a really great guy to chat up a pink penis. Shigama-san, Peroncino-san, could you please put your weapons down? I'm invoking my guild master's privileges. Didn't some other guild beat the 7 Lords of Sin already? Someone took out Pride. There was a post online. Apparently you're guaranteed a world-class item once you beat all the 7 sins, after all, they are world-class enemies. Speaking of world-class items, let's use the caloric stone to make a super powerful golem. Nuba-san. I feel it would be better to socket it into a weapon instead of making a golem. I think a suit of armor would be pretty good too. Well, we have a lot to consider for that. That's right, Momonga-san. We already know how to farm caloric stones, but that method depletes a lot of the metal from the 7 hidden prismatic ore mines. Yeah. As long as it's divided up among other guilds, we can't replace it once it's used up. Why not just take turns using it? How about selling the information to Trinity? So we sell it to the 2CH Alliance, and let them kill each other? As expected of Bellriver, Baruriba, our strategist. About the 2CH Alliance, it seems they are planning to ally with other guilds. Eh? Why's that? I heard they obtained some kind of world-class item, so they changed their stance towards other guilds. Akia, still, it'll be hard for them to form a high-tier coalition like last time. How about letting Momonga-san decide? Sounds good to me. Guildmaster, what do you think we should do? Eh? Wha? I wasn't paying attention at all. Eh? Oh, are you asking me now? Honestly. We'll go with majority vote as usual. That way nobody will have any complaints. Fine with me. Same here. Alright, then, the new coin will represent Albert-san while the old one represents Touch-san. Good, everyone, take your coins. We're going to listen to the two of them speak now. Are you done with this squabbling? You stand before Ein-sama. Kokaida's words were like a bucket of cold water dumped onto the ever-escalating quarrel between Sabas and Demiurge. Both of them turned to look at Ainz, who was staring at them, and their faces blanched in unison. There was no way to tell what expression lurked within the dancing points of light within Ainz's empty eye sockets, but there was no doubt that there was great power in his gaze. Forgive your servant's rudeness in your presence, Ein-sama. Your servant deeply regrets forcing you to witness his foolish behavior. The two of them bowed in apology, but neither of them can understand Ainz's reaction. Ah ha ha ha. The room suddenly rang with loud and relaxed laughter. Its origin was Ainz. They did not recall Ainz ever laughing with such mirth. Kokaitis, Demiurge, Sabas and Solution stared dumbly at this unbelievable sight. It's fine. I permit this. I permit you to argue. Yes. That's how it should be, going back and forth without end. Ah ha ha ha. They had no idea what had moved Ainz's heart, but Sabas heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Ah ha ha. TSK, even happiness is suppressed. Suddenly their master's mood calmed down, as though something had snapped inside him. Still, Sabas was sure that he seemed to be in good spirits. Running a finger across the staff, the symbol of a guild master, the representative of the 41 supreme beings, Ainz jovially spoke to Sabas. Now about Suer, isn't it fine? Home cooking. I thought that we needed a chef. I had intended from the beginning to leave Suer to you. If you thought that it was fine, then it was nothing that could bring harm to Nazarick. And while I did not suspect you personally, Ainz heavily emphasized the word suspect. It is true that you were suspected. Forgive me for this. When Ainz finished speaking, his head scraped the table as he bowed. Please. Please raise your head. Everything was due to my mistakes. It is just as he said. Suspecting him was out mistake. There is no need for Ein-sama to apologize. That is so. I am the first person to suspect Sabas-sama. Instead of Ein-sama apologizing, please punish myself. Ainz raised a hand to silence his panicking subordinates. He then continued to express his thoughts. I will leave Suer to Sabas. Now, Demiurge. As I said earlier, if it brings no harm to Nazarick, use your head to find a way to guarantee Suer's safety. Understood. After we return, I will immediately inform Nazarick about Suer. To the point where even if she is on her own, no harm will befall her. Excellent. This is what will happen. Is this fine, Sebas? Yes. Sebas bowed more than 90 degrees. Rather than his loyalty, it was to express his gratitude. Now, I believe that Sebas had a request for me? Sebas clammed up for an instant. Asking for any more than this would be extremely rude. Sebas began to wonder if Ainz's apology to him was intentional rather than being a stroke of good fortune for Tsur. Tsur was something like a present from Ainz, as a sign of his apology. Should anything happen to her, it would be disrespectful to Ainz. Thus, Tsur's safety would be protected. Asking for any more to such a generous master would be to step all over his kindness. Ainz grasped Sebas' confused thoughts and jovially asked. I do not mind, Sebas. Speaking is free. Speak. His master's words gave Sebas courage, and he opened his mouth. Yes. When I saved that woman, it seems that there were others captured. If possible, I would like to save them. Sebas. That is a request fit for insects. Such thoughts had brought you trouble in the first place, did it not? Do you not think that you should never speak of such things again? Demiurge frowned. However. Isn't it fine? Is there a problem? Hearing such light-hearted words from Ainz, Demiurge's eyes widened slightly. No, if Ainz-sama is fine, I have no reason to object. No, I ask not about reasons to object, but if there were any problems with that, it is not like they made fun of Nazarick or disrespected myself, right? Their suffering brings us no benefits. Then isn't it fine to save them? However, there might be a strong person there. Sebas may have investigated, but I do not believe that he has investigated about someone in the shadows. Ainz understood, and raised a small voice. I see. While his or her existence is unknown, should we still proceed? Since we are on the side of justice, I believe that there was no problem, but that was a miscalculation, eh? The basis of Ainz's actions were firstly for the preservation of Nazarick. Next was about the expansion of Nazarick and avoiding confrontations with other players. While they had roughly the same priority, Nazarick's expansion was slightly more important. He did not want to get involved in problems not related to Nazarick's expansion. Such were Ainz's thoughts, and he debated whether to refuse Sebas' request. When his gaze fell on Sebas, and when Sebas and Demiurge came into view, his decision changed. I shall allow you to rescue them. The air in the room shook. Ainz's earlier words were something he spoke of half-heartedly, but his current ones were ones that he had thought through. The two were overwhelmingly different. Why did Ainz make that decision? The answer to that question was not known by Sebas, Demiurge, Gokitis, and Solution. Why did the master make such a decision? Being able to answer that question without asking was the hallmark of being excellent subordinates. The air shook because they could not do that. They felt disappointed that they failed to understand their master, and felt shame as they were useless. In front of his deflated subordinates, Ainz gave them his answer. Because it is natural to save people in need. Ainz's words seemed to be lifted straight from someone else, but it caused all those present to widen their eyes. This was as they did not believe that such words suited their master. They were words that refuted all his actions until now. What was the existence known as Ainz? All their individual answers differed slightly, but what was common in all of them was that he was an absolute being. He was one of the 41 supreme beings that created Nazarick, and represented them. He stayed with them until the end, and was the one that all beings in the great underground tomb of Nazarick offered their undying loyalty to. He was filled with wisdom, endless foresight, the generosity to forgive his subordinates' failings, and was willing to grant generous rewards to those who worked for him. To those outside of Nazarick, he was coldly calculating and acted based on benefits. He was such an existence. Such an existence just said that it was natural to save those in need. It was like they were hit in the face. The most surprised was Demiurge. In the earlier conversation, on top of Ainz knowing what animal he was talking about, he had given Demiurge tacit agreement. Or so he had thought. The strange atmosphere reached Ainz. This was bad. He made a mistake. Seeing the Guardians and Solution's shocked reactions, Ainz realized his own failing. They were words from the past, something someone said. He had spoken them, but it was the truth that he had made a mistake. Ainz panicked due to this lowering his charisma, his ability to rule. Ainz was strong. In a 1 versus 1, he could take on any of the Guardians without tasting defeat. However, that was in the game. Actual fights do not go as planned. It was the answer he came to when the invaders came and fought him without magic. With his body, and even in terms of levels, Ainz was overwhelmingly superior. Yet he was pushed back by 4 weak adventurers. Ainz severely lacked the experience of fighting true battles, where people aim to take each other's lives. In such a battle, the possibility of Ainz losing to a weaker person than him existed. Thus, he had the powerful armor known as the Great Underground Tomb of Nazarick. Having his ability to rule at lowered would cause Ainz to fall into a great panic. Of course, Ainz himself knew well that as a normal person, he had no charisma. However, he felt that it had gone well for him until now. Losing it would be a pity. Ainz frantically used his brain to come up with a line that someone important would say. This was it. Ainz spoke in an important manner, to not panic. Do you not think that there is nothing more foolish than for Ainz Ulgoen to fear someone who may not even exist? Us who claim that Nazarick is undefeated. He suppressed his desire to look at the expression of the Guardians, and continued his act. If he had a heart, it would be beating fiercely due to his tension. Demiurge, Sabas, Cocytus and Solution had their eyes widened slightly. Compared to his earlier words, his current ones were far easier to understand. And they had much persuasive power. Ainz Ulgoen. For the strongest existence created by the 41 supreme beings to fear an existence that may not even exist was at the height of foolishness. There might be someone powerful. However, there was only one time when the Guardians tasted defeat. That was when 1,500 people at their level came at them in overwhelming numbers. And at that time, they were repelled by the supreme beings. Basically, the Guardians may have been defeated, but the Nazarick created the 41 supreme beings was undefeated. Ainz Ulgoen was strong. Caution was necessary, but there was no need to fear shadows. Even if there were, they did not need to run. As I said a long time ago, there is no need to find hostility, but with the cover of saving those in need, justice is on our side. If they say something, we just have to show it to them, our power. Basically, if there is a powerful enemy, we shall show them our power using saving the weak as our alibi. That is true? Understood. Demiurge spoke as their representative, and all of them bowed to Ainz simultaneously. Then we should take the city and show them our power. No. Ainz stopped Demiurge in a panic. There is no need to give them information. If there is a powerful enemy, we will investigate. Doing what you just said would cause information to fall into their hands. We shall perform our actions quietly. It is just as you said. I am taken aback at Ainz-sama's deep foresight. As expected of our ruler. I cannot match up with such wisdom. Demiurge smiled and agreed with Ainz. It was difficult to find fish in the depths with one's eyes, but baiting it to surface made detection simple. As expected of Ainz-sama. It is natural to save those in need. I did not think that those words had such a deep meaning. Agreed. Really? Why, yes, that is how it is. It seems you have understood? Then I shall leave that to Sabas, and we shall retreat. Anyway, clean up this manor and do not leave any information behind. Right, Demiurge? Of course. That is how it is, Sabas. Understood. Sabas bowed towards the frantic Ainz. To his master who was willing to grant his wish, his bow was filled with gratitude. By the way, should I kill all the humans I meet? There is no need. There is no need to leak information about us, but if none leaks out there will be no meaning. It would be better for some to live. It depends on the situation. However, do not bring anyone to Nazarick unless they wish to be there. It was not coercion but an act of free will. He wanted to make such a cover. Sabas understood and immediately replied. Understood. However, they are all women, right? I believe so. Women. Is it worth it to increase their numbers? Personally, I would prefer men as they are better for physical labor. I do not feel that there is a need to increase the number of women. Sabas had no response. Of course, if Ainz wanted to hear his opinion, Sabas would speak. Ainz immediately came up with an answer and shrugged his shoulders. Well, it's fine. Begin the operation. Overlord First Half Chapter 73, The Capital City of the Kingdom Part 13. Now. Sabas faced the heavy steel door near where he picked up Sewer. It was made of wood sheathed in metal plates, making it both thick and heavy. It was immediately apparent that an ordinary human being would have a lot of trouble breaking this door down without tools. Sabas grabbed the doorknob and turned. It stopped halfway through its turn. Naturally, the door to an underground enterprise like this would be locked. I am not adept at opening locks. However, it can't be helped. I'll do it my way. Sebas muttered to himself in frustration, and turned the knob again. If there was an observer, they would think that he simply turned the knob. That was how gentle he was. There was no way he used an unnatural level of force. However, the power in the turn. How much would it be if measured? It would probably be outside the realm of human possibility. The sound of metal being twisted rang in the room. The knob could not bear the pressure, deformed, and broke. Sebas then opened the door. He was not finished with the door, and put more force into it. The hinges shrieked as they were torn from the wall. A thick metal door with a large weight, a door made with the intention of protection, was pulled apart with nonsensical strength. What the hell? Behind the door was a straight path, and a bearded and muscular man who poked his head out of the inner door was at a loss for words. That was natural. If there was an old man holding a thick metal door with a single hand, everyone would make that expression. Especially those who knew how much it weighed. The door was rusty, so I had to use a bit of force to open it. For the customers, you should probably oil the hinges. As Sebas spoke to the man, he threw the door behind him. The door that seemed like paper in Sebas' hands returned to its original weight in midair and created a large clamor as it hit the floor. The man was completely frozen in shock. Sebas used the time to continue to proceed inside the room. Oi, what was that? The hell was that noise? More male voices came from behind the first one. However, the man facing Sebas did not bother about them. Instead, he addressed Sebas. Welcome? Completely baffled, the man stood stock still as Sebas walked up to him. The people working here were used to violence. However, the scene before him far exceeded what he had encountered in his accumulated experiences. The man smiled to Sebas in an ingratiating manner, ignoring the shouted queries of his colleagues from behind him. His survival instinct told him that the best choice here was to get into Sebas' good graces. Or no, perhaps he had reacted like this because he had deceived himself into thinking Sebas was the butler of one of the customers here. The sight of a big, bearded man trying to keep a twitching smile on his face was quite hard to bear. That was true even for Sebas. Sebas smiled. That smile was gentle and compassionate. Yet, there was no trace of goodwill in his eyes. "Could I trouble you to let me pass?" Thump. Or rather, it was more of a splat. A human flew, and the sound made on top of that. He was a muscular man in armor. He weighed 85 kilograms at the very least. He now spun through the air like some kind of joke, flying to the side at speeds invisible to the naked eye. His body savagely impacted the nearby wall with a wet splattering sound. The entire building shook violently, as though a giant's fist had struck it. Since the obstructing man was gone, Sebas entered from the open door. Closing the door behind him, he looked across the room in a graceful manner. It felt more like he was walking through an empty house than invading an enemy base. There were two men within. Their attentions were stolen by the crimson flower splattered across the wall. The smell of blood told of what it was. The smell of cheap alcohol hung in the air, a scent which one would never find in Nazarick. Sebas went over the information he had obtained from Tsuer and the assassin, then tried to figure out the building's structure. Her memories were spotty and she had not recalled anything important, but she had told Sebas that the actual establishment was located underground. He looked to the ground. However, the trapdoor leading underground was cunningly concealed, and Sebas could not find it. Still, if he could not find it, then all he had to do was ask someone who knew where it was. Sebas did such a natural thing. "Excuse me. I'd like to ask you a question?" 5e. The man he addressed immediately responded with a hoarse scream. It would seem that he had no intention of putting up a fight. One man entered. Basically the strongest man amongst the three of them was killed by this old man. If they normally met him, they would not be in fear. However, facing a monster that could easily blow away a man and make mincemeat of him using a wall, a 60-centimeter weapon could not give them the courage to face him. No, that would not be courage but stupidity. The fact that Sebas was a simple old man with a great bearing only increased their fear. If he were a monster even in appearance, they would think that's how it is, so the fact that he seemed human only served to increase the strangeness. As the men trembled, they stuck to the wall, doing their utmost best to move away from Sebas. "I have business downstairs, so could you please tell me how to get there?" That This would be betrayal. It would not be strange for them to turn into targets themselves. The man was still hesitating over whether or not to speak when Sebas cut through his reluctance with his next words. "There are two of you." The man's forehead broke out in oily sweat, and his back shuddered. Since there were two, one was unnecessary. The monster in front of him made its decision. Ah. There is a hidden door. Due to fear, one of the men could not speak, and in that time, the other man shouted in a large voice. The man who could not speak began glaring daggers at the other man. They were eyes of a man who knew that he lost the chance to survive to another person. On the other hand, the man who spoke had eyes of superiority. So it's there. If one knew about it and looked, they could indeed see the seams in the floor. "I see, you have my gratitude." Sebas had a happy smile on his face, giving the man he spoke to hope. He would run away with all his might, and when dawn broke he would leave the capital. He would clean up his act so as to not meet with another man like him. He had some savings. While surviving on that he would look for a job. He regretted his life until now, and made a promise to a God he did not believe in until now that he would live a new life. If one made a ranking of belief of those in the capital, this man would be quite high in the rankings. However, in the end, his life until now was filled with dirt. "Your usefulness to me is now at an end." Sebas smiled, and the man realized what would happen to him after those words. His face turned gray and he trembled uncontrollably. Still, he clung to a faint hope and cried. Please don't kill me." "No." The room froze. The men's eyes opened wide. As if they heard words they could not believe. Sebas turned his head. The joints of his neck grinded together. "But I told you, didn't I? Please, I'll do anything, just spare me." "Indeed you did. However." Sebas sighed deeply and shook his head. "I cannot." Are you kidding me? You can take it as a jest if you wish. However, the outcome will still be the same, no? Oh, God. Sebas recalled the tragic state of Tsuer when he had rescued her, and he narrowed his eyes. What right did villains have to beg the gods for aid? More to the point, Sebas' gods were the 41 supreme beings. The man's plea was like an insult to them. "You reap what you sow." Those words, as cold and hard as steel, slashed through all hope and made the man painfully aware of his own demise. Would he choose to fight, or would he choose flight? Given only an instant to decide, the man chose immediately. He chose flight. They could see the result of fighting such a monster. In that case, they might as well flee. Doing so would grant them a faint possibility of survival. They was correct to think that way. Several seconds, no, for 1 second, they extended their lives. The men ran towards the door. Sebas caught up with them in an instant, and their body whirled. A swift wind blew across the men's head, and their bodies collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been cut. 2 balls hit the wall and slid to the ground, trailing blood in its wake. A moment later, the men's headless bodies spewed a geyser of blood from its neck, covering the ground in gore. If you thought about the things you did until now, it should be obvious what happens to you, right? Sebas gazed into mid-air. "I pray that you do not turn into that now." Sebas slowly walked, avoiding the blood splatter. The feat of decapitating someone with a roundhouse kick would have required incredible strength and speed, but the most impressive thing was that Sebas' shoes had not been stained at all. Sebas kicked in the hidden door in the floor. First, there was the sound of metal components breaking. Then, there was a large hole in the ground. The smashed door slid down the stairs below with a resonant crash. It was a small room. The only furniture in this almost empty room was a cabinet and a bed. The mattress was not a simple mass of straw bedding, but an actual cotton-stuffed mattress. It was well made, of the sort that noble homes might use. However, this mattress was designed for functionality and so it looked plain, without any decorating and would not be used by nobles. A naked man sat on the mattress. He was well into his middle years, and gluttony had made his frame flabby. His looks had originally been average at best, but putting on the pounds had made him that much uglier. He looked like a pig from every angle. Even though he was a pig, he did not have a shard of a pig's intelligence, and was one in the sense of an insult. His name was Bloomhavish. He raised his fist, and punched down onto the mattress. The sound of flesh striking flesh rang forth. A look of delight blossomed on Bloom's face. The sensation of smashing flesh traveled up his arm, and his body shivered even as goosebumps of pleasure sprouted on him. Bloom was pressing down a naked woman. Her face was swollen and bruised, and the skin was flecked with spots of blood. Her nose was broken and the blood leaking from it had clotted on her skin. Her lips and eyelids were similarly swollen, completely distorting her originally beautiful face. There were bruises on the rest of her body, but the damage was worst on her face. She had been trying to protect her face with her hands until just now, but now her arms lay limp on the bed. Her hair spread out messily on the mattress, like it was floating in water. The woman seemed to be unconscious. The sheets around them were stained with old, dried blood. "Oi, what's with you? Tired already? Huh?" Bloom raised his fist and punched downwards. With a thud, his fist connected with her cheekbone, and pain surged up Bloom's hand. His face twisted. "Che. That hurt, you bitch." He angrily punched her again. The mattress creaked in time with the thud of flesh striking flesh. Her swollen skin split, staining his knuckles with blood. Said blood splattered stickily onto the mattress, dyeing it with carmine spots. "You-oo-oh." The woman no longer struggled despite the beating. Non-stop bludgeoning like this could end up killing someone. However, the woman had survived, but not because Bloom had been merciful. Rather, it was because the woman's death did not concern him. All that was needed was to pay to dispose of the problem. The woman clung to life because the mattress had dissipated the force of the blows. Had she been beaten while lying on a harder bed, she might well be dead by now. In truth, Bloom had beaten several women to death in this place. Weaver, he had to pay for the cleanup every time he killed someone, which strained his wallet. Thus, he unconsciously went easy on them. As he looked down at the woman's unmoving face, Bloom licked his lips. This brothel was perfect for satisfying unique sexual fetishes. Normal bordellos would not permit their customers to do such things. No, they might, but it would be expensive. If it were a noble with territory, they could use a reason and take a commoner to do it. However, he could not do that. Bloom used to be a commoner. He was simply picked by his noble master, and was chosen. Thus even if he were given money, he could not gain territory. Life was good when slavery had been permitted. Slaves were a form of property, and people who manhandled them had been scorned. It was just like how others would roll their eyes at people who threw their money around. However, slaves had been the only way for someone like Bloom, with his special sexual preferences, to satisfy his desires. On top of that being stolen, to Bloom, he had no other place to release. If he did not know about this place, what would he do? It was correct for him to agree to work with his noble master. Normally, Bloom did not have the status to enter this shop, and entered due to his authority and faked an identity. "Thank you, my master." A look of calm came over Bloom's eyes. It was hard to imagine that he could be so grateful to his liege given his personality and his sexual proclivities. However, the embers of a flame blazed up in the depths of his belly, the flames of wrath. This emotion was directed at the woman who had deprived him of slaves with which to satisfy his lusts. That bitch. His face turned red with anger, and his eyes were bloodshot. He imagined the face of the royal whom he should have been serving, the princess, on the body of the woman beneath him. Bloom gathered the anger within himself into his fist, and laid into the helpless woman. Fresh blood flew with every blow he struck. If only I could smash that face of hers. How good would that feel? He rained punch after punch into the woman's face. His fist struck her cheek, and a surprising quantity of blood spurted from between the woman's swollen lips. Perhaps she had cut the inside of her mouth on her teeth. The woman's sole response to this beating was to tremble slightly. Two. After a few more strikes, Bloom was panting as his shoulders rose and fell. His body and forehead were slick with sweat. Bloom looked at the woman he had pinned underneath him. Her condition could only be described as tragic, and she was close to death at this point. What lay there was a puppet whose strings had been cut. Bloom swallowed audibly. Nothing pleased him more than to rape a battered and bloody woman. The prettier she had originally been, the better. There was no better way to satisfy his sadistic desires than to destroy something beautiful. If only I could fuck that woman like this. Bloom thought of the haughty features which belonged to the young lady of the house which he had just visited. She was as beautiful as the princess, who was herself known as the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. Of course, Bloom was very clear that he would not have the chance to abuse such a high-class lady. The only people Bloom could indulge his fetishes with were the dregs of humanity who had been dumped into this brothel, to be used and then discarded. Such a beautiful woman would surely be bought up by a wealthy and powerful noble for a huge sum. Of course, Bloom had to move so that will happen. How I wish I could beat up a woman like that, beat her to death. How happy and satisfied would he be if he could do that? Of course, that was nothing more than a madman's ravings. Bloom looked down at the woman crushed beneath him. Her bare bosom was moving slightly. He smiled lewdly as he confirmed that fact. Bloom reached down to grab the woman's breasts, deforming the soft flesh between his fingers. There was no kindness, and only had force. There was only pain. The woman did not react at all. She was on the verge of death and could not respond to such trivial pain. The woman Bloom was squeezing differed from a doll only in the softness of her body. However, Bloom was somewhat dissatisfied by her lack of resistance. "Save me. Spare me. I'm sorry. Please stop." The woman's cries echoed in Bloom's mind. Should he have fucked her while she still had the strength left to scream? Bloom continued squeezing her breasts, a vague sense of regret in his heart. Most of the women who had been sent to this brothel were no longer in a right state of mind. They had chosen to run away from reality. When one took that into consideration, the woman chosen to serve Bloom today had been better off than most. Was that woman like this too? The woman who escaped appeared in Bloom's mind. There were several problems, but as an external member he did not know much. He had no interest in what happened to the brothel employee who had let her go. However, when he thought of the butler he had encountered during his visit, Bloom could not suppress the mocking laughter in his heart. That thing had coupled with countless men, and even with female or non-human partners. There was no point in protecting her at all. And yet that old butler had said he was willing to pay hundreds of gold coins for her. It was a miracle he had not laughed out loud on the spot. Did she have such a worth? Ah, the woman who ran away screamed very well too. He searched through his memories and recalled her wails. She had been fairly normal by the standards of the girl sent to this brothel. Bloom smiled lewdly, and began to slake his bestial lust. He seized one of the pinned woman's bare legs and spread it wide. Her emaciated, slender leg was thin enough that he could encircle it with one hand. Bloom pressed himself between the woman's legs. As he grasped his tool, now turgid from the burning desire that consumed his body, the door behind him clicked, and slowly opened. Ah! Bloom hurriedly turned back, and a vaguely familiar old man appeared within his field of view. Then, he remembered who that old man was. It was the butler he had met at that mansion. The soles of the old man's Sabas shoes clicked neatly as he walked into the room. Bloom was speechless in the face of his casual, natural movements. What was that house's butler doing here? Why had he come to this room? Bloom's mind went blank in the face of this inexplicable situation. Sabas walked up to Bloom. Then, he saw the woman crushed beneath Bloom's bulk and directed an incomparably frigid glare at him. "You like to beat people, do you?" Ah! The strange mood in the air drove Bloom to rise as he went for his clothes. However, Sabas moved faster than him. A thwap resounded in Bloom's ears, and then his vision shook wildly. A beat later, Bloom's right cheek caught fire as burning, stinging heat radiated out from it. He had been struck. No, in this case it would be more appropriate to say he had been slapped. It took a while for Bloom to realize that. What? Faster than he could say anything, his cheek rang out with a slap. It did not stop there. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Stop. Bloom had always been the one who hit others. Nobody had ever hit him. These few blows left him in tears. He raised his hand to protect his face as he stumbled back in retreat. His cheeks throbbed with pain, as though they had been scalded. Da you. How da you do his humie? His swollen, reddened cheeks hurt whenever he spoke. Is there a problem? Or kurharai? Idiot. Hu uhayu hinkayam? Just another moron. Sabas closed in on the retreating Bloom and with a thwap, he dealt out yet another resounding slap. Staff. Bloom covered his face like a child being struck by his parents. He liked using violence, but he had always used it on those weaker than him. Bloom could not do anything to those who would resist and hit back. Even if Sabas appeared to be just another old man, Bloom would not dare raise his hand to him. He had no guarantee that he would not resist. Perhaps he had sensed Bloom's craven nature, but Sabas lost interest in him and looked back to the girl. How tragic. Bloom ran past Sabas as he stood over the girl. You idiot. Bloom fumed. What a foolish old man. He was going to gather everyone in this place to teach this old man a painful lesson. How dare he strike someone like himself? He would not go easy on the old man. Bloom would make sure he had his fill of pain and fear. The image of the butler's mistress, the angelic-seeming girl, appeared in Bloom's mind. The mistress would have to take responsibility for her servant's mistakes. He would have her bear the burden of the pain that the old man had caused him. Bloom would teach that old man exactly who he had hit. As those dark thoughts went through his mind, Bloom charged out the door as his beer belly jiggled violently. Someone help me!" he shouted. Surely an employee would come to check on him if he called for help. However, his hopes were dashed the moment he stepped into the hallway. The passage was silent. It was as though nobody was around. Bloom looked around nervously, still naked. The bizarre silence of the hallway filled him with fear. At a glance, there were several doors on both sides of him. It was only natural that nobody would answer him. This place catered to clients with exotic tastes, dangerous ones, in fact. Thus the rooms were all soundproofed. However, there was no way the employees would not have heard. He had seen several of them when he had been brought to his room just now. Each of them was a burly man with bulging muscles. How could an old man like Sebas compare? "Why homing? They are all dead," he replied to Bloom's cries in a soft voice. When he turned around in a panic, he saw Sebas. "There are some inside. But most are dead." The employable. "How many people do you think are her highway?" "There were 3 who looked like employees on top and 10 more down below. There were 7 others like you." "What nonsense are you babbling?" Bloom looked incredulously at Sebas. "Of course, some are alive. However, they will not come to help you. I have broken their limbs after all." Exclamation mark. "All right, I do not think there is a need to spare your life. That being the case, please die here." Sebas did not draw a sword or ready any sort of weapon. He simply walked up to Bloom in silence, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That nonchalance only served to frighten Bloom, because he knew Sebas truly wanted him dead. Wahe. Akenjai Akenjai Hayuhahadomuna. It was a lie. He did not have such things. He just wanted to buy himself time. However, Sebas paid him no mind. "I have no interest." "Then fee far you woeing fies." There was no reason to do this. Why did he have to kill him? Bloom's thoughts finally reached Sebas. "Do you not know, even after searching your heart?" Question mark. Bloom tried to recall. What did he do wrong? Seeing the emotions on Bloom's face, that nothing resembling guilt came up, Sebas sighed. "Really now?" As he said that, Sebas savagely kicked Bloom in the gut and sent him flying. So that is what they mean when they say that something is not worth keeping alive. Several of Bloom's organs broke, and Sebas spat out those words to him who had died from the pain. Sebas then proceeded inside, towards where there were still people. Overlord First Half Chapter 74, The Capital City of the Kingdom Part 14. Oh dear, shouldn't he stop and think for a bit? While some service is excellent bait for those hiding in the shadows, destroying the door is a bit too eye-catching, isn't it? Demiurges whispered were blown away by the wind and disappeared. If one looked down, they would see the figure of the door Sebas broke. The place where Demiurge was currently standing on the roof of the opposite building. Demiurge was standing on top of the building and his appearance could not be said to be good. He wore a cloak with a hood, and his face was covered by a mask borrowed from Ain's. It was a plain mask, but was a magic item that had dark vision, activated passively. However, Demiurge had the ability himself, and thus it had no more meaning than hiding his face. Why was Demiurge alone in such a place? This was not due to Demiurge's will. This was as he was ordered to work together with Sebas by the smiling Ain's. Because you are friends, you should work together. Holding the staff of Ain's Ulgon, Ain spoke in a leader-like manner that he could not say before. "I'm troubled, but it's Ain Sama's intention for me to overcome it." Demiurge thought about his own abilities and wished for sufficient backup. This was as secret missions were not Demiurge's expertise. Just having the assassin solution join him would have been enough. However, Demiurge's internal state was never vocalized to his master. Demiurge's mouth crumbled into a smile. "Because of the support of a guardian like yourself, there will be no problems." This was as Demiurge's master felt that he was deeply reliable. Having that said to him made it difficult to request for backup. Ain Sama is a terrifying person. Causing Demiurge to prioritize his emotions over logic was. "Oh, I shouldn't. Demiurge resisted making a slovenly face. Just recalling his master's words caused sparks to run down his spine to a level that would cause most people to feel pain from it. However, while it was a waste to kill the greatest feelings he felt, he had things to do. More importantly, he could not do this again. Just this once he would put his emotions first. Next time, no matter what, he would put the mission first. Demiurge decided so and thought about the next thing. Oh dear. I don't have enough options. Demiurge thought about using his ability for an instant to summon a demon. Succubi had mind control abilities and magic. It could be said to be useful in such a situation. However, he understood that humans had a strong aversion to demons thanks to his ranch. In addition, they came here with the aim of saving people. Using demons would be a bit ill-fitting. In most cases, those that summon demons would have the label of evil attached to themselves. The dissatisfaction from not having enough options appeared in Demiurge's heart, directed at someone not present. You went ahead too far, you fool. There were no people in the building with the destroyed door. Of course, Sabas' figure could not be seen. Originally, it would have been proper to proceed together with Sabas. However, their relationship was bad. They did not hate each other, but they felt that the other was a bother, and they did not mesh well. That was why the job was split into two parts. Sabas would enter the interior and save people. Demiurge would teleport the saved humans into Nazarick. Of course, Demiurge's responsibilities were not only that. In order to prevent too much information from leaking, he was observing the surroundings. However, due to that naivety, do you understand how much trouble you dragged in? Thinking of Sabas, Demiurge's face under the mask crumbled. Using Ein-Sama's kindness for us subordinates for your own gains, how frustrating. It was a rare sight to see Demiurge grumble. If any of his fellow guardians saw this, they would be shocked. That was how bad Demiurge and Sabas worked together. It was to the point that he felt that he could work better with Bestanya, who had the complete opposite personality. He had confirmed that he could not work well with Sabas. Sabas chose to save them in a hurry, causing Demiurge to prioritize readying Nazarick to receive the slaves and to make preparations to retreat from the building. Demiurge had just managed to fly to the nearby roof when all he saw was a broken door. It is not clear who is watching, and the higher-ups of the kingdom might move. As an invader, stimulating their curiosity so much is nothing but a fool's errand. Sighing, Demiurge pondered over his next actions. It might have been natural to repair the door, but Demiurge had no repair magic. Nor illusion magic. If he had to do it, then he could force it back in. Or he could hide the door and make people think that it was originally open. Which way was better? While in thought, Demiurge was spoken to. Demiurge had used plenty of caution while coming to this place. It would be fine for some information about his master to leak. He had such thoughts, but if Demiurge walked along the town with his true face, with his demonic appearance, it would be too eye-catching. That was why he had activated invisibility with a scroll and acted invisibly. He could use up to the 10th tier, but the types that he could use were extremely limited. It was easy to just count the number. He could not use perfect unknowable, and thus activated it with the scroll he received. Next was the black clothes that covered his body. Next was that he flew quite high to get there. Due to this caution, discovering Demiurge was almost impossible. Would anyone be using see-through invisibility and dark vision at the same time and be paying attention to the sky? The chance of that occurring was extremely low. However, on that day, there was such a person. So, can I ask what you are doing here? The voice from behind Demiurge was such a strange and muffled one that he did not understand from what species it came from. How careless. Having this occur on top of Sabas' mistakes caused Demiurge's face to frown even further. Demiurge's ability stats was high. This was as his level was 100. Also, an anthropomorphic being gained more stats per level than humanoids and demi-humans. However, he was not skilled in thief or ranger skills that helped his detection. Ainz, Aura and Shaltir could use magic to do this, and Sabas and Cocytus could use their warrior senses as a replacement. However, Demiurge had none of this. Thus, he allowed this person to draw near. Trusting one's basic abilities too much will lead to pitfalls, eh? Demiurge sighed. Thinking about what a failure this was, he hung his head and immediately began to think of a method to rectify it. What are you talking about? Turn here slowly. If you make any strange movements, you will lose your life. You might be an ally, but you don't want to lose your life over a mistake, right? Her intention to attack was not fake, and feeling that strain, Demiurge slowly considered. There was a small existence. She was wearing the same black robes as Demiurge and her long black hair shook in the wind. Her face was hidden by a mask. Evil Eye. Demiurge did not know, but she was a member of the strongest adventuring party in the kingdom, Blue Rose. Demiurge began to speak to the mysterious person. He wanted to gain the initiative in the conversation, no matter how little. I came here to save people? Why are you here? Why, you ask? Having the initiative taken from Evil Eye's voice wavered. Demiurge laughed and continued his words. If you get in my way, I have to kill you. I see, we have the same goal. Why do you have such a suspicious appearance? I did not think that you would tell me that, but this is a secret mission. They tried to sniff out each other's intentions, and the next one to speak was Evil Eye. Is that so? I got it. Then we will handle the rest. You, leave. Evil Eye's words caused the sense of righteousness to move over to her, causing Demiurge to be troubled. He felt that she had the arrogance and strong will that showed she had the protection of the law. I cannot believe those words. Could I see some proof? If I show you, will you follow? Before that, could you remove your mask? If you live in this city, you know who I am, right? Demiurge understood that he was in an extremely dangerous situation. He had considered the possibility of running into a person connected with the upper brass, but even if I know, I do not know if you are that person. Could you please remove your mask? There would be no famous person who would normally wear a mask. They were probably hiding their faces using a mask like Demiurge. His words were a result of such thinking. However, here, that was a big miss. What? Remove my mask? If you do, As if cutting him off, Evil Eye slowly readied a stance. I'll tell you honestly. I have no idea which noble hired you, so I did not intend to let you escape. However, not knowing the least about me has piqued my interest. As a resident of this world, how do you not know about Evil Eye of Blue Rose? The meaning in those words. Demiurge sensed that she would not negotiate. This was to buy time, right? That's one reason. The two masked figures looked at each other. As a wind blew across the rooftop where they stood, Evil Eye shivered. This was not due to the wind, but she felt it directly from the one in front of her. The feeling of hate and impatience blew towards her, along with a sense of pressure. She felt the pressure that came with facing a monster stronger than A-class. And this seemed to be much more powerful. The experience of someone that exceeded her experiences in her long life was a first. The reason why she could still try to move while being rooted to the spot was due to her unnatural body. However, Evil Eye tried to move, but her slight hesitation was a large gap to a powerful existence like Demiurge. Inflict self-harm. Demiurge released his curses of commandment at Evil Eye. What? What? The surprised voices numbered two. The former was Evil Eye's and the latter's was Demiurge. Evil Eye flew away. She had cast flight magic and thus could easily fly over the uneven surface of the rooftops. Demiurge did not attack the retreating Evil Eye but merely shook his head. Evil Eye and Demiurge glared at each other as they tried to read the other's moves. There was only one reason why the superior Demiurge did not immediately attack her. Oh dear. Demiurge understood that since his method of attacking, his curse, had no effect, he was in greater danger. If his curse of command worked, it was an overwhelming ability. However, it was not all-powerful nor the strongest. It was a mind-related ability that worked on sound. If one knew about it, there were multiple methods to block it. For example, if that person were over level 40. Or that they had perfect resistance to mind control or control-type skills. Or that she was invulnerable to sound-based skills. There were countless other methods to block it, such as being too dumb or not knowing the language. The problem was, how did the enemy in front of him protect herself? If she had blocked it due to her high level, this would be troublesome. That bastard, doing a half-hearted job. Demiurge was unhappy with Sabas. Since Demiurge had not heard about any person who could block his curse of command, he blamed the person in charge of collecting information, Sabas. In actuality it was different. Sabas had collected information on the person known as Evil Eye. Not delivering it to Demiurge was a failure on Ainz's part. Ainz was originally a normal person, and had no experience at the top. Thus, while he understood the importance of information, he was not good at understanding what information to give to his subordinates and when. It could not be helped that despite the failings of Shaltir, Repeating it again could be said to be foolish. However, Ainz did have an excuse in this case. Demiurge was backing up Sabas. Also, he did not expect to encounter Evil Eye, and he had no time to explain only the information that he deemed necessary amongst the large amount of information that Sabas brought back. Demiurge did not know any of that and was thus unhappy with Sabas. Thus, Demiurge was thrust into a situation without information, as if forced into the darkness without a light, restricting much of his actions. And Evil Eye. She was in the same position as Demiurge where she could not move. It was not clear how strong her opponent was. Well, she could feel that he was an overwhelmingly strong person. However, what was her chance of victory, or the chance of escape? Since he was too high level, she could not tell. How powerful was the enemy in front of her? What led her to this thought was the earlier attack. She could not see the attack with her eyes, but she felt that the mysterious existence released something strange. Evil Eye had compiled a large amount of knowledge, but this was a strange move even to her. Famed adventurers of history win battles before they are fought. Those were words that stressed the importance of information. Basically, it was that the analysis of information before the battle would decide the victor. She had done this in past battles. Thus it was natural that she hated random encounters. Basically, Evil Eye was in a similar situation to Demiurge where she was in the dark without a light. After some time, reading each other's movements, the first one who moved was the disadvantaged one, Demiurge. This was a result of them realizing that the longer this dragged out, the better it would be for Evil Eye. Stepping in with a thud, Demiurge charged in towards Evil Eye. Out of the countless attack methods he had, Demiurge chose his fist. In the middle of his charge, he had changed his magic to flight magic, and thus received no penalties from the uneven ground beneath him. Demiurge's physical ability was the weakest amongst the Guardians. While he would not lose to Ainz, but he had no chance of victory with any others. He was about as strong as the battlemates, perhaps even stronger. He chose a melee battle was out of caution. It was to avoid showing his hand. Evil Eye knew over 100 magic spells, and had countless she could release at close range. However, the experienced her realized something. That she could not beat him with her magic here. The image of an attacking giant dragon. The feeling of something far more powerful than that stabbed into her. Translocation damage. Since Demiurge was put on guard by an unknown magic, he killed some of his force and whacked her with the intention of seeing what would happen. The shield he was expecting failed to materialize, and his fist pierced into Evil Eye's small stomach. Oh! Demiurge felt his fist hit something soft, like a thick futon. As a counterattack, Evil Eye punched Demiurge with her fist, but she could not penetrate Demiurge's magical defenses. Demiurge's body had the property of reducing damage as long as it was not holy. Shit. While holding his fist, Demiurge chose not to attack Evil Eye as he had felt caution about the unknown magic. The two made some distance. It was what Evil Eye hoped for. Regret the fact that you did not chase after me. Evil Eye fed her magic power into the lightning dragon in her hand. Eat this. Maximize magic dragon lightning. The lightning attack was more powerful than normal, and the dragon rammed into Demiurge. His black robes were painted white by the lightning. She had no confidence of defeating him, but she should be able to cause quite some damage. Evil Eye released her most powerful magic for that reason. Demiurge slightly tilted his head at the approaching lightning. He made no attempt to block. And the moment that the lightning swallowed him, it dispersed into the surroundings. Silence and darkness returned to the surroundings, making it seem like the earlier white light was a lie. Unharmed. There was not even a speck of ash on his suit. Seeing that, Evil Eye's face under her mask crumbled. "What are you?" she shouted. Various emotions were contained inside her voice. "I have not met anyone who can be unharmed from my magic. Even high-ranked dragons. And the demon gods. What are you?" "That's a nice voice." His quiet voice rode on the wind. In that voice was an emotion that one did not show to an enemy. What? Just what expression do you have on your face? Just imagining it makes me excited." Evil Eye had chills run down her spine. She knew several strange people. However, all of them were weaker than her. She never felt panicked. Just that the existence in front of her was really bad. There were monsters that lightning damage was not effective on, those with lightning resistance, but this was a different reaction. The next thing she thought was an ability to invalidate all magic. However, that was difficult without an overwhelming difference in power between the two sides. If it were magic invalidation, It meant that the one in front of her was far far more powerful than she was. However, it is a pity that I cannot play with you. Demiurge's change caused shivers to run down Evil Eye's spine. If he were to be serious. She stood at the pinnacle of this world. The seriousness of someone who could outclass her. That meant, Evil Eye frantically searched for a method to survive. All while quivering in fear that she had never felt in her 100 years. However, before Evil Eye could do anything, Demiurge's magic activated. Eat untidy, Ito and Dadi. However, before Demiurge could release his magic, his target disappeared. What? Demiurge's face moved and he gazed at the rotting roof of a house 10 meters away. There was Evil Eye. Along with another person. It was a woman bundled in black. She was hugging Evil Eye from behind. Sniff sniff, nice smell. This is not the time to play, you idiot. Evil Eye screamed at Tina, who had no panic in her voice and was instead rubbing her face on her comrade. Tina sharply felt the meaning in those words, and while she had no change in expression, the color in her eyes became stronger. A strong enemy? The scale is different. My magic is useless on him, and his physical abilities outshine mine by a huge margin. He is at least more powerful than A+ adventurers, and is probably hero class. That's bah. In simple metrics, Evil Eye's physical abilities outclassed those of the warrior of Blue Rose, Gagrin. It was true that in a battle, Gagrin would be the victor due to her experience, skills and weapons. However, Evil Eye was a magic caster. Thinking of that, her battle ability was on another level. And this was someone who caused her to say that he was out of her league. Just how powerful was he? Those words were enough to change Tina's focus. Run. We can't win without everyone. Understood, dickhead. One of Tina's bad habits, her jeering, leaked out. He did not specifically react to her jeering, but Demiurge's eyes rumbled and changed into a cracked gold. Demiurge had a class called Gazer. It was a class that only those with a special gaze ability could gain. While this class could learn multiple sight-based abilities, its innate ability was only one, petrification. Sight attacks count cause various effects even without meeting their eyes. The cons were that its range was short, but the pros were that they could target multiple people in view. In the game of Yggdrasil, there would be terrible-looking effects occurring within the effect range, but nothing like that occurred in this world. If they failed to resist, they would be turned to stone. Such a powerful gaze was turned towards them. However, before that. Daibakufu no Jutsu, Great Waterfall Jutsu. With the sound of her voice, a wall of water rose up from beneath Tina and Evil Eye, covering them. It occurred on a roof. It was not natural. The water drew a dome and surrounded the two of them. It blew upwards, like a waterfall. The froth created hid the figures of the two inside, blurring them. Now the effect of his gaze would weaken. Ninjutsu? Then she is a shinobi? Shinobi was a class that required one to have many assassin-related thief skills, and that they had to be over level 60. There were Kashin Koji who gained more ninjutsu in exchange for losing close combat abilities, and their counterparts the Hanzu who were proficient in hand-to-hand combat. They were weaker than warriors of the same level. But they were not people who Demiurge could fight with ease in close range. She does not seem that strong though. Her body was covered in weapons and defensive gear. Demiurge thought that they were magic items, but he felt no sense of danger from them. However, underestimation was a problem. He should at least increase his physical abilities. Demiurge's body protruded from beneath his clothes. Demonic Essence was a tool in a devil's belt. It greatly increased one's physical abilities. It was a method to temporarily increase one's muscle strength. He intended to break through the Daibakufu no Jutsu, Great Waterfall Jutsu. Shaltira was a priest type, Aura was a beast tamer type based on a druid, and Kokaitis was a warrior type. Demiurge also had a certain type of his. It would be fine to call it the monster type. A gaze attack, a blaze, monster summoning, curses, an ability to give bad statuses like poison or illness. He was made of classes that could provide such abilities. The earlier Gazer and Demonic Essence was a part of that. Demiurge had strengthened his body and jumped. However, as if waiting for that, the voice of a woman on the other side of the waterfall could be heard. Furukangu no Jutsu, Unmoving Varyu Jutsu. The shine of the waterfall, the reflecting light from the dispersing water, changed. It became the glisten of metal. The flow of the waterfall stopped, and changed into a large lump of hard precious stones. Exclamation mark. Demiurge stopped his fist and looked at the two blur figures he could barely see inside the giant lump. The types of ninjutsu was limited, and in place of tiers, the effects changed depending on the amount of MP used. Another way to say this was a Tier 1 Fudokangu no Jutsu, a Tier 2 Fudokangu no Jutsu, a Tier 3 Fudokangu no Jutsu. And high-level ninjutsu that had consumed a lot of MP was quite powerful. Their effects were more powerful than Tier 10 magic. The dangerous thing was what level of magic this rivaled. The outside was the same so he could not tell. Fudokangu no Jutsu, unmoving Varya Jutsu, would create a shield that could defend well against physical attacks. It was weak to magic attacks. However, Demiurge did not have many magic spells and could not break it, and he could not give the opponents time. Should he fight flashily? Demiurge pondered. For an example of Demiurge's strong attack options, he had a lot of O attacks. Organ Incinerator, Lit, an incinerator fed by internal organs, Dawn of the Morning Star, the Fire and Sulfur of Sodom, would be his main choices. However, that was too flashy. If a pillar of light fell from the sky, it would be too eye-catching. Yes. Far more than a certain broken door. Now, what to do? While thinking that, Demiurge lightly hit the shield of diamond. He clicked his tongue. This was as he realized that he was tricked. He hit it lightly. At that moment, everything crumbled. The countless fragments of crystals danced into the air, but they did not remain on the ground. Inside the broken shield were two humans. No, two human-like things. They were clothes stuffed with something. And they were standing in a human fashion. Shanjutsu, escape jutsu. It was a ninjutsu that, for the price of losing their armor, allowed one to teleport to a substitute. Since there were many people who would prefer dying over losing their armor, in Yggdrasil, it was a dead ninjutsu. However, it was effective in this case. So they escaped. He could summon a demon to chase after them. He could apologize to his master and send for reinforcements. Several ideas appeared in Demiurge's head, but he threw away all of them. It would not be a problem for them to escape. It would be dangerous if Demiurge's true form were revealed, but it was only a problem in that a battle occurred on the rooftops. He did not recall leaking any sensitive information. Then this was far from being a life-threatening problem. And Demiurge opened the scroll he was given. The magic written on it was, "Message. I have to apologize to Sabot. We should retreat immediately. Even if there are others we should save." Below Demiurge's mask, was a small smile. "Evil Eye, are you okay? Ah. I showed you something unsightly." Reacting to her leader's, Lokyu's, words, Evil Eye began to slowly stand up, wobbly. Since Tina brought her here, she had collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. The reason was mental fatigue. It was impossible for Evil Eye to feel mental fatigue, but she had parts similar to humans. That was why it was significant. "No, I don't mind." Anyone would have crumbled in fear. Rather, it would be bad to not go right. The place where they were going should have one man. However, Evil Eye stopped them. "We should stop. If we go we die. We can't win with everyone?" Evil Eye froze and looked at Tina. "Impossible. He is stronger than me." "Stronger than you? That's..." Everyone in Blue Rose was at a loss for words. They had not heard of an existence that could defeat Evil Eye. Evil Eye alone could wipe out the current members of Blue Rose. This was the natural reaction of hearing of someone that was more powerful than her. Even if all the members who fought me were here and I joined, it would be difficult to defeat him. Even with Bachan? Gagrin immediately stood up and scratched her head. She was not here currently, but she was the strongest person in Blue Rose, excluding Evil Eye. Even if she joined they may not win. Such a nuance was created. What do you think he is? The guy's true form? He is far stronger than a high-ranked dragon in human form. Anything else, I don't know. Why is such an existence here? Would I know? That's bad, if he died, climb. Still a virgin. He said he came to save people so he might be alive. His objective is unclear. But it does not fit his image. All the members of Blue Rose shook their heads. Why was this ridiculous existence inside a human city? The image did not match, and was extremely irregular. Sorry. I removed the possibility for dialogue. Well, that's a big miss. Pierced by Tia's response, Evil Eye raised a groan. Evil Eye's actions were due to her arrogance as the strongest. She should have acted smartly and passed the baton to either Tino or Tia to find out who he was. Well, it can't be helped. We don't know how the dialogue would go, so if you lower your head we will forgive you. If we had the money we could have gotten that girl out. The problem is, I have not heard of anyone stronger than Evil Eye. People at the level of a legend might exist. If he is not a legend but was hiding in the world, I want to know the reason he moved. They could not believe that an existence stronger than Evil Eye really came to save humans. They could understand if there was a deeper reason. Is he a demon god? If he's a demon god, we can still win. The 13 heroes had fought the demon gods. And they could win. Locus made a wry smile as she realized that mysterious existence was far more powerful than such a demon god. A person who was stronger than one that could destroy countries and cause suffering to many. Such an existence was moving about in the dark. If he did not have any hostility then it would be fine. But if he did? Isn't he a danger to the world? That's bad. Tina reached the same conclusion and whispered. Everyone else also reached it and sighed with disheartened faces. Overlord First Half Chapter 75, The Capital City of the Kingdom Part 15. Everyone's eyes focused on Sabas who had suddenly appeared. The caution in their eyes was strong, but there was also hints of mocking. While they believed that he was not no one since he had reached this point, but they saw him as a simple old man and thus could not be on their guard. This was especially true for the two strong ones Zero and Lubelina. "Oh Gi-san, did you come to the wrong place? I apologize for this. Everyone has gathered here and thus I had wondered what was going on. You can't find any woman to sleep with here, so could you return to your room?" Lubelina spoke in a teasing manner, but Zero interrupted her. Lubelina stopped talking. "He's an intruder." "Yes. I think so too." "How foolish. Your luck is bad, just like the kid. You chose a time when I'm here." Sabas made a wry smile. That smile made Zero unhappy. It was a smile that made him seem that he was carefree. That was not a good smile to make in front of a man like Zero. That was why Zero chose to finish it in one blow. Gigi. Zero's 3 tattoos released a light. The class that Zero had, the Shamanic Adept, allowed one to channel animals into their bodies. In Zero's case, he had the legs of the panther, the back of a falcon and the arms of a rhinoceros. The number of times he could use this per day was limited, and thus he usually chose to activate one at a time. But he did not do this. He used them at once. Zero used the abilities of all 3 animals at once to create a powerful single attack. Climb had prior information of this, and tried to cry out in a panic. This was Zero's trump card. This was a simple punch, but the speed and special power of it gave it a destructive ability that was off the charts. It was a blow like if a several-ton rhinoceros running at 80 kilometers an hour tapping you lightly. If one took it they would die. Zero closed in on Sabas in an instant. On the other hand, possibly due to the speed, Sabas did not move. His defense was too slow. Zero's fist was thrust out. The fist connected with Sabas' vulnerable belly. It was a perfect, immaculate strike. Sabas was blown back. It was natural. If he used Fortress he would not have been blown back, but there was no sign that he used it. Basically this was a fatal blow. At least, that was how it should have been. Yes. That was what everyone expected, and he went against it. Sabas did not move an inch. He blocked the punch which Zero had thrown with all his might head-on, using nothing but his belly, his own muscles. Nobody who saw it dared to believe it. One could say the scene before them was unreal. The difference between their bodies was obvious at a glance. However, the outcome had been completely the opposite of what was expected. The person who could least believe it was naturally Zero himself. This was the most powerful blow he could make. He could not believe any living being could take it and remain unharmed. That was how it had always been until now. That was what he had always thought until now, but then this scene had unfolded before his eyes. Thus, he did not react even as a black object flashed before his eyes. Sabas raised his leg to the air. The foot raced past the tip of Zero's nose, like the motion of a flying swallow. His leg went higher and higher, until it fell. An axe kick. That was the typical name for a move like this. However, its speed and power were anything but typical. "Who are you?" Zero muttered, and the corner of Sabas' mouth curled up slightly. A gruesome sound of cracking filled the air. Zero fell to the ground, his skull pulverized and his neck and spine shattered, as though he had been crushed by a several hundred kilogram weight. The room was silent. In a word, everyone in this room was transfixed. Sabas shifted away from where Zero's smashed skull was gushing fresh blood and patted at the place where Zero's fist had struck. Phew, that was close. If not for your timely warning, I would probably be dead. Are you kidding me? What warning are you talking about? The three people present did not speak, but they shouted the same thing inside their hearts. You have saved me. My disciple. Wah. Ah. Yes. Climb was speechless. It was natural. What could he say? In front of such a nonsensical scene. What happened? Lubelina could not believe the scene in front of her, and switched her gaze between the kneeling Zero and the unharmed Sabas. Just what happened? She could not believe what she saw. Lubelina knew Zero's strength the best, and this was a natural reaction. It was nothing much. It seems I was just a little bit stronger than him. Not just a little bit. Everyone there was thinking more or less the same thing. Now, the two of you. Sabas looked at Lubelina and Succulent. Succulent fell back in fear, but Lubelina stepped forward. Their different reactions showed their differing confidence in their skills. Lubelina was the strongest excluding Zero, but Succulent knew that he was far from Zero's level. Her opponent was here to kill her. Then she had to attack first. Lubelina believed so. She ignored the fact that something unbelievable had occurred in front of her eyes. It was a fluke. A coincidence. She could only believe that. Gazef Stranov was the strongest warrior in the surrounding countries. Compared to him, Lubelina and Zero would lose. However, it would be a tough battle. Even if they could not win, they had the confidence to wound him. There was no way that she could lose to an unknown old man. Thinking about it, he could have used a trick. Such as using a magic item that invalidated blunt attacks. It was not that he did not avoid Zero's attack, rather that he could not avoid it. That was why Lubelina stepped in. She putting everything in her skill. Ha! Heart penetrate in Lubelina's hand left a platinum afterglow and aimed for Sabas. There was no trace of her relaxed attitude like she had with Climb. This was the fastest blow she could make. Her target was his throat. To Climb and Succulent on the outside, it was an unstoppable flash of light. And the sound of metal bending rang out. Not only that. There was one more. The sound of bones breaking. Now one left. A bent heart penetrate fell from Sabas' finger onto the floor. Then, Lubelina, whose neck was bent 270 degrees also fell. What? Succulent whispered. Climb turned his shocked face to Sabas. In just a few minutes, no, not even that, the situation changed. No, one could say it changed too much. Oi, no, you. Succulent unconsciously backed away. He did not expect that man he met at the mansion be such a person. No, he could not make such an prediction that they had stepped into the world of fantasy. With every step Sabas took forward, Succulent took one back. Please wait. I surrender. I'll give you everything you want. I have quite the position in our organization. If it will make you happy, I will give it to you. Please wait. I have no interest. Succulent continued backwards until his back hit the wall with a thud. Realizing that he could not retreat further, Succulent became as pale as a sheet. Please wait. At the distance where his fist could reach Succulent, Sabas' legs stopped, and his face turned to Climb. Returning his now empty potion bottle into his bag, Climb again spoke to Sabas. Could you leave his punishment to us? If he tells us everything, we can cut off everything from the roots. We can make a system to prevent such a thing from occurring ever again. Seeing Sabas' slight change in air, Succulent saw a path to survival and frantically begged. He did not try to attack the seemingly defenseless Sabas. No, it was even scarier that he seemed defenseless. Why, yes. I will. I'll spill everything. I promise. I won't lie. Sabas moved his hand. No, the two did not have the kinetic vision to see Sabas' movements. Thus they did not understand what happened. Succulent simply lost consciousness, and only by confirming his chest was still moving, Climb understood that Succulent had lost consciousness. Understood. I'm weak to you saying that this will never happen again. Thank you very much. Climb bowed his head while his wounded body quivered from the pain. Pay it no mind. Since you can bring him back alive, I can spread better information. Just my musings. However, You have such terrible wounds. Sebas moved closer to Climb and stretched out his hand. It seemed like a normal hand, but the scary thing was the strength behind it. He froze for a second, but then Climb realized that running would be extremely rude, and stopped himself. Sebas smiled, as if understanding Climb's thoughts. I just healed your wounds. Sebas' hand touched his armor. That instant, he felt something warm flow into his body. It is healing using ki. It cannot heal old wounds, but I believe that it can heal the wounds you received. He felt his wounds warm, and instantly cool. At that moment, all the pain in Climb's body beautifully fell away. Thank you very much. Sebas shook his hand at the deeply bowing Climb. More importantly, you, What is it? Sebas placed his hand on his forehead as if he had been talked to. Is that so? Understood, I shall retreat immediately. However, some are unconscious and I cannot confirm if they want to come. Of course, our master is. Understood. The conscious people number 8. Understood. Sebas sighed. I apologize. I originally intended to take everyone someplace, but some are unconscious and I cannot confirm their desires and have to leave them here. What do you mean confirming their desires? Just my musings. Please don't mind me. By the way, did you come here to save someone specific? No. Not anyone specific, but I am here to saving those in pain. Ho! Sebas raised a voice of admiration. So there are people like that. The people I have met are terrible people. Then I shall leave the remaining people with you. I shall take the rest. Climb hesitated for just a moment, but considering Sebas' personality, that was the best option. It was true that he was a mysterious person, but he was kind and would definitely not let people suffer. Having them follow Sebas was probably better than leaving them with him. Understood. Then I shall leave it to you. I am very sorry that I am unable to save them now. No. If I recalled what you said when we met, I understand that you have made quite the determination to come here. I will not do anything that would criticize you. Thank you very much. Then will you be going together with the people you saved? I intend to. Did Sebas intend to leave together with the saved? That was the gain from coming here. Climb understood. Can we meet again? I'm afraid not. Is that so? I would have liked to train together again. But that's too bad. Sebas smiled. Should we have the chance to meet again, I shall train you again. Now I shall return. You have many things you should do here, do you not? Good work, Climb. Climb had reported to Renner and she smiled in return. I am happy that you have returned safely. Thank you very much. Climb deeply bowed his head. He stifled a yawn that tried to make its way out. Returning to Renner, he had reported various things to the point that the sun was about to rise. Climb was trained as a soldier and could function a day without sleep. However, he had fought a battle where he faced death, and his mental fatigue was huge. He was so tired that if he lost focus, he would fall asleep. Renner had felt it. She smiled kindly at Climb. You should be tired. Go back and rest. Ha! Climb's gaze moved from her to Marquis Raven. Renner instantly understood what he thought. This was because it was Climb. I intend to talk for a bit more with the Marquis. Then shall I remain here? The two thoughts of even though Renner was not sleeping, how could he sleep, and if he did not get enough sleep he could not help Renner fought inside Climb. There was another reason for that. It was his master's intention to put an end to that fight. No. You cannot. Climb should get some sleep. Since it is later than usual I shall allow you to use the guest room. Make sure you do not have any fatigue tomorrow. Understood. He had to obey his master. Climb deeply bowed and left the room. Hearing the door close, Renner's face rose slightly as she smiled at Marquis Raven. That is jealousy, isn't it? I believe so. Thank you for going along with it. Renner spoke in a lonely manner. Climb worried that Renner spending the night with Marquis Raven would spread weird rumors and felt that he should remain. It was an unnecessary worry, but she felt happy about Climb's feelings. She had learned countless things this night. She had to grit her teeth in unifying their opinions. Especially since the appearance of an unknown figure was in large part of it. Now, what do you think? There is too little information, but Sebas and the man on the roof, an unconfirmed existence. The two of them definitely have a relationship. Their objective is the same. However, I cannot say that they have an amicable relationship. The mysterious existence that Evil Eye met, an unconfirmed existence. and the old man known as Sabas that Climb met. Both seemed to have come to save people, but the problem was to what point they should believe them. It was true that the actions of Sabas did match his words. However, the unconfirmed existence was merely paying lip service, and there was no proof that his words were true. If they are hostile, the option of observation disappears. From what I can tell from Evil Eye's conversation, he does not have such skills. And even if we assume that he came to attack Sabas, we did not discover any traces of a large-scale battle. There is a possibility that the meeting with Evil Eye Donor changed his plans. Anyway, should they be in a hostile relationship, since Sabas and the unconfirmed existence did not battle, they should have the same level of strength. Isn't that a leap in logic? It is true that Evil Eye Dono and Climb Kun have vouched for their strength, but Evil Eye Dono and Climb Kun have different levels of strength, and so it is difficult to say they are equally strong. The strongest adventuring group in the kingdom, Blue Rose. The magic caster who was part of that and a simple soldier had vastly different qualifications. The reason why Sabas did not fight the unconfirmed existence is unknown. Sabas brought out several people. If they are not of the same level, he could have attacked him there. If they were not equals, the only other option why the unconfirmed existence did not attack was that Sabas was stronger. But if so, why did he come? Only questions were left. Personally, I believe the unconfirmed existence was working together to transport the people Sabas brought out. If that is the case, then I do understand. Then do the two have an amicable relationship? Maybe not. Well, it is not unimaginable. Then their relationship is? They should be subordinates of someone. Sabas, who Climb ran into, was working for a merchant, but that was probably a lie. However, his figure and his attitude showed that he was an excellent butler. There was no way that Climb would mistake this since he had worked for Renner for so long and had seen the world. What about the possibility that Sabas is working for the unconfirmed existence? I cannot say there is none, but it is low. They are probably working for someone who did not come here. The reaction of the unconfirmed person to Evil Eye. The reaction of Sabas to Climb. It was completely different. It was true that Evil Eye and Climb's first meeting was different. However, it was too different. If Sabas worked for the unconfirmed person, Climb might have been killed. Rather than that, it was more likely that they were working for the same master but at different orders. And since the two did not work closely together, their master did not come. What do you think their master is like? He probably does not hold hostility for the kingdom. However, that is for now. The master's thoughts are within the range of common sense, and so it can go either way. Saving people required one to properly recognize others and to have mercy and other emotions. For example, if it was a dragon that was far above humans, even if humans suffered, it would continue on with no interest. It was the same thing as how one would not even see a bug at the end of the road. However, one would help it if were a dog or cat. This was as they stimulated the sense of pity. Basically, Renner deduced that the person behind Sabas and the mysterious existence felt pity for humans. Since he or she had emotions like humans, he or she could become an ally or enemy. However, Renner saw that there was a hole in these thoughts. That was if Sabas was lying. However, having the confidence that one was not wrong, on top of having a person of a different level work for them, they themselves must be of another level. Marquis Raven changed his expression as if he had recalled something. By the way, Your Highness, do you know about Einzulgon? No, I do not. It was a lie. She had heard some rumors about that name. However, Renner wanted to hear the pure thoughts of Marquis Raven and acted dumb. Is that so? There have been rumors that an extremely powerful magic caster has appeared near Erantal, and that is the name of his master. The powerful people in this matter, and the powerful man in Erantal. I believe there is some relationship. The possibility is very high. An unknown powerful figure appeared in the kingdom once. Then it would not be strange for them to have a relationship. Were they friendly, or hostile to each other? That was unknown. If he can use Tier 6 magic, he has the same ability as the head magic caster of the Empire. -1. Einzulgon is more powerful than that. 2. Einzulgon, Sabas, and the unconfirmed existence have no relation. Which is more likely? Renner spoke to interrupt Marquis Raven's words. Marquis Raven tilted his head in puzzlement. Ignoring the second, the problem was the former, the first. The head magic caster of the Empire, Fluter, was the strongest magic caster in the surrounding countries, and only the 13 heroes were superior. There was no reason to place anyone above him. However, Renner seemed confident enough to not be randomly saying this. Then was it a lie that she did not know? But, what was the reason for lying? Why do you view this person called Dine so highly? It's simple. Sabas and the unconfirmed existence. I worked on the assumption that they have a relationship. Marquis Raven was confused. He did not understand how one could connect the two simply by virtue of strength. If one thought about it simply, it would seem that Renner was saying that Sabas and the unconfirmed existence were stronger than Fluter. He could not understand how one could say that they were stronger than Fluter because they are stronger than Evil Eye. As if reading that Marquis Raven was confused, Renner continued. Do you know Evil Eye's true identity? The strongest magic caster in the kingdom. She had an identity that was above that. Was she one of the 13 heroes? However, Marquis Raven's expectations were dashed. She is, Landfall. The bomb quietly exploded. Marquis Raven opened his eyes in shock. He then unconsciously stuck his fingers in his ears and twisted. This was as he distrusted his ears. However, he found nothing wrong. Opening his mouth wide, he tried to form words but closed his mouth. When he finally decided to open his mouth, an unbelievable amount of time for someone like Marquis Raven to be dumbfounded passed. What? Landfall. She was the evil vampire lord who destroyed a country. She was a monster destroyed by the 13 heroes and left her name in the continent's history as a monster amongst monsters. According to the original legend, she was someone who a country might barely equal if they pulled all the stops. It was said that she destroyed a country and filled a city with undead, and was a monster stronger than the demon gods. It was impossible to hear her name outside of fairy tales and legends. But to hear that she still existed, and was in the kingdom. One should praise Marquis Raven for being able to remain seated. What? She is still alive? Yes. Marquis Raven became angry for an instant at the calm Renner. He believed that it was not such simple information. If Landfall was true to legends, she was someone who could destroy the kingdom. However, Marquis Raven recalled a certain information that cooled down his head instantly. Wait. Just a bit. Marquis Raven audibly gulped. Then he recalled something unbelievable. Landfall, said there was no chance of victory? About the person on the roof? Yes. How can you stay so calm? Evil Eye. The legendary monster said that even with all the members of Blue Rose, she could not defeat the existence on the roof. Basically, someone that can destroy a country, someone who can destroy the surrounding countries is right here. So it seems. Well, it is unknown if they are hostile. How are you so calm? Are you an idiot? We have to do something. How? That quiet voice brought Marquis Raven back to his senses. It was true, they could do nothing. Doing random stuff was more dangerous. Breathing several times, he calmed down his rough breathing. Your Highness. Please forgive my foolish words. I do not mind. That is the usual thing to do. Then, what should we do? About the unconfirmed existence? Yes. Shall we report to the king? We should not. It does not help after all. Renner quickly waved her hand. However, should the king move, he will attract the eyes of the nobles. If he even tries, people will ask for an explanation. It will not end well. That is. Marquis Raven could not disagree. Even if they only told the king, if he moved, there would definitely be people who would raise complaints about it. Then the king would be asked for an explanation. If the kingdom was not split into two, the king could use his absolute authority and there would be no problem. However, that was not the current situation. One of the most powerful nobles would leak this information to the empire. If the king did not complain, the court would fall apart due to distrust. If he explained, it would be pandemonium. We cannot leak Evil Eye's identity leak out to anyone. She is my friend of a friend. I do not want to destroy that relationship. It would be foolish to betray our largest fighting strength, right? And excluding that, information about such a person would freely flow in the kingdom. How would the nobles act? The largest commotion in history would occur. The kingdom would tear itself apart. So it does not help. What about requesting help from other countries? Do you believe it? Marquis Raven. I can't. Marquis Raven hung his head. I should not have come here today. It seems my sleepless nights will continue. There was nothing they could do. At most they could leak information to the adventurers and have them search. However, that might turn an existence that was not an enemy into one. In the end, there was too little information. Since they could not read the other party's stance, they could not step in. The main problem was that they had no analysis of their fighting strength. Basically they could do nothing but to hang their heads. In contrast to the frantic Marquis Raven, Renner was still calm. Marquis Raven felt anger in his head. Of course, this was an outburst of anger. While he thought about using sarcasm on her, he recalled something. By the way, returning to Ainzulgone, does Evil Eye have a disciple known as Camilla? No, I don't know that much. Renner asked why, allowing Marquis Raven to explain. A person known as Moman came to Erandel and called himself the disciple of Ainzulgone, and he was chasing a vampire known as Camilla, who was Landfall's disciple. Renner had heard most of the recent happenings at Erandel and nodded her head. I will not know if I don't ask, but isn't that a lie? Why is that a lie? Didn't they simply aim to infiltrate the kingdom? If it is known that he is opposing someone dangerous, should his opponent appear, he will become more reliable. That vampire was probably working together with him. What a charade. Then are Sabas and the unconfirmed existence part of a different group? This is quite irregular. If Sabas had matched his actions with theirs, then he should have some connection with them. If not, then he had a different aim. Or did the occurrences in Erandel completely deviate from Renner's realm of possibility? While unclear, I shall pray that Ainzulgone, Sabas and the unconfirmed existence are not in a cooperative relationship. If they are different groups, there is the chance of them fighting each other. If they were working together, then the kingdom could not do anything. Marquis Raven nodded in agreement. Agreed. However, then the possibility of negotiating with this Gone is. Anyway, I seriously desire information. Marquis Raven, can I ask for all the information you have? Renner narrowed her eyes. She had saw someone who could put the happy life she had planned with Climb at risk. She only then noticed Marquis Raven's hard expression. Allow me to say something bad first. What is it? Today has been nothing but bad news. Such a feeling welled up in the two of them. We already have someone on their way to the home of Ainzulgone. Can we do something about it? With the information they gained, the other side was an existence they had to get into the good books of. More importantly, he was a person who might have a relation to Sabas and the unconfirmed person. They should not have sent a simple messenger but should have directly sent one of the royal family to such a person. It is impossible with my abilities. I have taken all the possible late measures. Thus anything more is impossible. I had hoped for a friendly relation at least. That might have been naive. Then how about having them attacked by bandits and killing everyone? Renner spoke those harsh cold words with her normal kind face. However, there was no child here to say that such methods were cruel. That is not a bad idea, but I do not have anyone that can do that. I can ask, Blue Rose. Renner then shook her head. There was no way that they could accept such a dirty job. What about using workers? That will be difficult. Attacking a carriage with the king's symbol, it will be treason. Even if we trick them, should they see the emblem on it, they will retreat immediately. What about searching for clueless people? That will take time. Should I go myself? That is not a bad idea, but it's impossible. Should the person known as Golden show her face, there will be many problems. Just by thinking about it I can come up with 4. Then we shall pray that our messenger does not do anything strange. We can do nothing else. Marquis stared at the wall. On the other side was the location of the person known as Ainzulgone. How will the situation progress? Depending on that, it might be a problem that affects the kingdom. Marquis Raven felt unease run through his body.